So what's happened is that we've had we have like the semifinal today, semifinal, I think.
It's the quarterfinal was going to be today.
Quarterfinals, excuse me, quarterfinals going to be today. However, we had a series of conflicts in terms of the guests. They had scheduling conflicts and all that, and it just kind of like piled up, literally, like even today, like a new one. So it was really unfortunate. So instead of doing that, we will still gathering members of DGG here to be a part of a discussion, and they guessed it, talking about necrophilia. Because why not?
Have to. At least
like,
once a year.
that's only the proper way. Like, oh, we can't do the tournament. Let's talk about fucking dead bodies, obviously, right? So yeah, we're gonna have a discussion. We have someone who's gonna defend that position, and we're gonna have a series of people coming in and trying their hand at it. So it's gonna be a bit different. We'll postpone the actual tournament part until next Sunday. So hopefully everything will clear up by then, but we'll see. But yeah, hope you'll enjoy this, what we got lined up for you. So I guess we'll bring in our first guest. I'm supposing he's ready for me to drag him in. Oh yeah, he's muted here, so I'll just drag him in. So hopefully he realizes he's in here and he will unmute himself. Hey, hello, Lactoid. Hello, hi. Thanks for being here.
What's up, friends?
Hey. So Lactoid, you are going to have a very interesting debate. Here we're gonna have a series of individuals come through. What was that? What happened to your camera? But okay. Toyo, do you want to do this? Want to bring them one at a time, or would you like to bring them all at once? You're muted, Toyo. Okay, well, he's working on that. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I heard you. Go ahead, say it.
My laptop mic is the one picking it up. I'll adjust that as we go. Lactoid's accepted kind of a challenge tonight. He's going to be 1v5ing on necrophilia. He feels that strongly that he can defend his position here. He's prepared opening statements. He's really ready for this.
Okay.
I think we can bring everybody in and let him start it, and then give everybody a chance to respond to him, and then we can, between the two of us, even though we're participating, we can kind of keep the discourse settled. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right, then we'll do it that way. All right. Thanks so much. Here we go. I'm dragging people in. J-Boz, is he part of it too?
Yes.
Okay. So everyone in that room?
Most of the people are in there. I believe 2 of your server members are in there chilling.
I don't know which ones. So tell me which one was.
Let me take a look real quick. 1 second.
Okay. So 1 second, guys.
Everybody in there, yeah, that should work.
Okay, all right, I'm pulling them in. Okay, hello, hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Yeah, thanks for being part of this. If you got a camera, turn it on. Be quite helpful. But yeah, thank you, for coming through. So why don't we start by introducing your names first, right? And then we'll do opening statements from our Lactoid, right? So Lactoid, you go first. Introduce yourself to the audience.
Absolutely. As before, I'm still Lactoid, bane of leftists, doer of more than 17 push-ups, and real-life attorney. Well, we'll see how long I'll hold that job after this debate.
Well, thank you so much. The attorney, I love it. Okay. Next, we'll go to Dumpster. Hello, Dumpster. How are you? Introduce yourself to everyone.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I'm Dumpster. I can turn my camera on here in a bit. Yeah, I'm a software engineer by trade. Here to make Lactoid give at least a few concessions on the position, maybe. So, don't know if I'm going to be able to knock the whole thing down, though. So we'll see.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, next we have Fipto. Hello, hi. Thanks for being here. Introduce yourself.
Hello. Hey, I'm an electrician by trade, looking to become a master engineer and hopefully move my training into like nuclear energy because I do want to innovate more in that area. So I do that by day, and by night I'm a political advocate.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. And next we have J Boss. Hello, J Boss. Thanks for being around.
Hello again.
Hey.
You can catch me most days yelling at people in DGG about everything.
Okie doke.
And
Wow.
this conversation, this topic is kind of legendary, but I've actually never had this debate with Lact. It's notorious.
Lactoid is legendary.
All right. Oh, that excites me. I'm loving it. All right. Let's go to Ragnarok. Excuse me. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Ragnarocker. I hang out in the DGG Discord. I'm one of the people who gets yelled at by J-Boss sometimes. And I'm here for it.
Okay, so what we'll do, thank you all so much. What we'll do is we'll have Lactoid give his opening statement, and we'll move from there. Everyone will just respond to him, okay? All right. So Lactoid, please.
Absolutely. So I wrote this opening statement only within the course of about 30 minutes. So it's going to be a little bit shorter, maybe not quite as well refined, but this is an argument that I've been having for probably years now, right? It is a position that I feel very strongly about, and I want to thank you guys for first, thank you Prime for hosting this, and then I would like to thank all of my challengers, and no hard feelings when you lose. It's just something that it's easy to win the argument when you're right about something. So we all may have a different idea of what America is, and in my opinion, the foundational idea of America is the prioritization of the individual, okay? A free society in which a person may pursue their own self-actualization unimpeded by the state is the goal. That the free society is the goal. Even though this self-actualization may fly in the face of some people's conception of morality, the principle of America is that we only intervene with individual choice when that choice interferes with the pursuit of self-actualization by innocence which we share the world with. It is my belief that all laws that go against this fundamental principle are exceptions to America and fly in the face of what America stands for. In 1967, the United States Supreme Court mandated that laws against interracial marriage be struck down, asserting that marriage was one of the basic civil rights of man, fundamental to our very existence and survival. To deny this fundamental freedom on so unsupported a basis as the racial classifications embodied in these statutes, classification so directly subversive of the principle of equality at the heart of the 14th Amendment, is surely to deprive all the state citizens of liberty without due process of law. This was America becoming more of what America is. It was America growing true to their principle. This was expanded in 2003 when the Supreme Court legalized homosexual sex, asserting that the petitioners are entitled to respect for their private lives. The state cannot demean their existence or control their destiny by making their private sexual conduct a crime. Okay, this was what they said, quote. Now, why did they say this? Because laws that make private sexual conduct a crime are generally go against what America stands for, right? They're incredibly sus. They're incredibly suspicious, okay? It flies in the face of what America stands for, because when you deny the ability of sexual self-actualization, you do more harm than just prescribing specific behavior. Here's another quote from that case. Although the laws involved in Bowers, which was the prior Supreme Court case that illegalized or that allowed Texas to have a statute illegalizing homosexual sex. Although the laws involved in Bowers and here purport to do nothing more than prohibit a particular sexual act, their penalties and purposes have more far-reaching consequences, touching upon the most private human conduct, sexual behavior, and in the most private of places, the home. They seek to control a personal relationship that, whether or not entitled to formal recognition in the law, is within the liberty of persons to choose without being punished as criminals. The liberty protected by the Constitution allows homosexual persons the right to choose to enter upon relationships in the confines of their homes in their own private lives and still retain dignity as free persons. As we move over the years more and more towards the principle of America, I assert strongly that we have some ethical holdouts that need to be remedied, okay? Freedoms that must be actualized. For too long, necrosexuals have been cast out, demonized, and have had their private sexual conduct, which in of itself does not harm anybody else, declared immoral or unchristian. How much longer are we going to accept religious tyrants lording over us and regulating what we can or cannot do with our bodies, whether that be consensual adults having sex with each other, for which there is no harm, or consenting adults having sex with material, for that is just what a deceased body is. We would all agree that if I was to go outside and have sex with a pile of dirt, that this would obviously be legal. Although it may seem strange in your personal opinions, a pile of dirt really is no morally different than a fleshlight. It's just a non-animated material. And a body is just dirt. We know that it turns into dirt. And so as we move forward, my challenge to all my opponents that I would like to have addressed is simple. If you think necrosexuality is wrong, I challenge you from a fresh corpse to a pile of dirt. Tell me where the line is. Where is it wrong to actually have sex? Is love not love? Will love prevail here in this debate? Time and time again, sanctity, a concept from religion, has been used to demonize and oppress sexual minorities. Today it ends. I ask that we all come together and agree to legalize and normalize necrosexuality. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Please, open to the panel.
Lactoid, how do you feel about fucking dead kids?
Bite the bullet. Bite the bullet.
So wait, hold on, Prime. Can you actually have this on Twitch?
All right, hold on. Let me rephrase that.
We're a little
Okay, so,
gray
okay,
on.
okay,
We're a little
let's-
gray on the TOS.
Yeah. So yeah, right. So here's what we're doing. We are discussing this. We are not encouraging anything. Got it, right? We're discussing this in a hypothetical world, maybe in Minecraft, in fact, right? Minecraft, there's like the zombies there, right? I think.
Yeah, we're playing Minecraft.
So we're playing Minecraft.
We're playing Minecraft.
We are not encouraging a fucking thing. However, I guess you
Not
can
a single fucking thing.
Let me rephrase this.
Please, go ahead.
Do you believe there should
And how
be
about the
legal?
hype train? Go ahead.
Do you believe that this extends to children, child corpses? Do you think that this freedom would extend to child corpses?
In Grand Theft Auto.
In
Grand
Grand Theft Auto.
In Grand Theft Auto.
Look, I'm not afraid of biting bullets. I don't want to have our wonderful host.
Should we walk away from this idea right now? Aside from the
You're
fact
too
that
deep.
it would make you look horrific. Should we just walk away?
I'll
walk
bite.
away
I'll
from this.
bite the bullet.
He
if
wants
you
to
want me
bite the bullet. I think
We're all
so.
in
I want to
agreement.
bite the bullet, but
He wants to. Let him bite it. Let him bite it.
I don't want anyone to get in trouble.
We know
Prime
we know
has
the
his
answer,
finger
right?
on
We know
the
what
kick
it is.
button as
We
we
don't need to
speak.
say
If he gets in trouble, he just gets booted, and we go back home and we tell everybody we beat Lactoid, and it only took 5 of us to do it. This is
I
our
mean,
18th
okay,
push-up,
all right,
boys. Go above and beyond.
I haven't heard anything, right? So
Yeah, I have a few questions for you.
wait. So hold on.
Okay,
I haven't heard anything from Prime prescribing me from answering. So I'm gonna go ahead and answer, right?
He said you're good.
You can answer as long as you're not encouraging, right? So like let's pretend you were a terrible person, right? And you were in favor of doing some illegal things. Here you wouldn't say that that's the case. You would say that I'm in favor of a world where these topics can be explored, you know, something like that. You where I'm going.
Sure. Yeah. So like we're talking more in like the philosophical sense of should this be allowed as opposed to whether or not you should actually go and do it, right? Okay. I will not say that you should go out and do this, okay? But I will say that when you think about it, the reason why we don't allow like certain sexual behaviors is because there's a risk of associated harm. Now, with my whole argument is that with bodies or really any other kind of material, you're not going to hurt that material because that material is inanimate, right? It doesn't feel pain. It's also not going to have any kind of self-actualization. There's no documented reason that it's going to suffer harm. And this would include any dead body, regardless of the age of the person who died.
Can I ask just a few questions, just clarifying a few things? So I just want to know if this would change your mind at all as to whether you think it's okay to have sex with a specific body. Let's say somebody put in their will and made sure everybody knew when they died that they don't want their corpse fucked. Is that okay to say? Can I speak freely like that? Okay. Sorry, I should have checked before doing that. I don't anticipate that will change your answer, but I'm just curious if it would. Does the consent beforehand, or the lack of consent, the explicit denial of sex with my corpse, does that change your mind at all?
In my opinion, it doesn't change my mind, right? In my opinion, I don't actually. So in American, I guess it differs by state, but the general rule in America is that in your will you can set certain prohibitions to happen to your property, but we've all accepted like. These prohibitions are restricted by a certain number of years legally. And the logic behind this is that, yeah, like, you know, if you die, you want to give your stuff to somebody or whatever, or whether that be your house or your land or your various other goods, you should be able to do that. And generally, the courts have allowed people to make sure this property is only used for certain purposes. But we accept like the slippery slope here. What if I said, you know, when I die, I don't want anybody to live in my house or live in my land within this property ever, right? Okay, well, let's say we had a whole neighborhood do that. Now that whole neighborhood is like off limits forever, right? We don't allow. Generally, people are in favor of giving like dead people right of control, but everybody has a limit. For me, that limit is for me that limit's right off the bat, right? I don't think that dead people have rights because they're not people, right? You literally have just decomposing material. And so when you supposedly violate a will, who are you hurting? You're not hurting anybody because nobody exists for that will for the violation to actually cause any harm.
So I have two more questions. I'll try to make them brief. I don't want to steal everybody's time.
Hit me.
The second one is, if we legalize this, where do you see people getting access to these bodies? Just curious what that would look like for you. In GTA 5.
Yeah.
And we're not advocating for anything. In fact, we're doing the opposite.
Right. And so I'm not sure this is necessarily within like the scope of the debate, because, you know, even if it was difficult to get a hold of a sexual partner who was deceased or any kind of material that you could have sex with, it doesn't necessarily change the argument that I think it should be, or that in this hypothetical world it should be legalized, right? Gotcha. Because like homosexuality should be legalized.
Well, I guess a different question.
But no one's like entitled to like a gay sex partner.
Right. Okay. So reframed. What you're not able to have sex with everybody. Would you say would you agree with that? There are some situations where you can't have sex with a body? Or would you say that a necrosexual could have sex with any dead body that they wanted to?
Thank you for using the good term on that one.
I wrote it down so I'd remember to say it.
Rude?
Sorry?
Is like using necrophiliac like rude?
It depends, right? I think that.
Are you trying to humanize the prospect of necrophilia?
I'm not trying to do anything.
Listen, I'm all for cosmetic language. That's fine.
Yeah. So, okay.
Horse is a horse, I guess.
So, I have a conception, right? So, a lot of my principles, again, going back to what I think America stands for and what my foundation stands for, are freedom of self-actualization. And I think included within this is the idea of private property, right? So, you can give property to somebody and then they own it. I also believe in the idea of self-ownership, which is that you own yourself. So
let me give you a hypothetical, if that would be okay.
Hit me.
So you would be okay with somebody whose brother passed away. They're 18 or older, passed away, and they say, I would like for you over there to have sex with this body in GTA 5, you would be okay with that. But if the person said, no, I don't want anybody having sex with this body ever again, what would you say to that? Would you say that necrosexuals ought to obey that desire?
I would put the same regulations on it in this hypothetical world as you would a fleshlight, right? If I have a fleshlight in my closet and somebody wants to come have sex with it, it's my property, right? Nobody can just come in and have sex with my fleshlight. However, right, like you can go to the store and buy fleshlights. I'm fine with that, right? There's a supply of fleshlights that can be marketed and perhaps shipped via Amazon to different people's homes, where they can then have those materials for their own use. But
so under certain circumstances, necrophilia, given the right series of events or circumstances, necrophilia, you could have sex with a corpse. If the stars aligned. But if it's my property, I'm responsible for the body, it's mine, I don't want somebody to have sex with it, and I put it into a grave, it would be, it should be illegal for somebody to dig that up and have sex with it. Would you agree with that?
So if the graveyard is private property, that could be trespassing.
Well, at the very least, the casket is private property. So unless it's decomposed to the point where you can get access to the corpse without going through the casket that I own,
well, the lot's owned as well.
Yeah, the lot's owned as well, right?
Yeah, I suppose it is, yeah.
Right.
So that would be illegal. So you would need to go through certain avenues to get access to these corpses, right?
Yeah. And I also want to point out, like...
So it'd be illegal in all circumstances that exist for almost all private property, but if somebody gave you permission, you could.
Well, I mean, this would be the case for almost all property, A, and all sexual partners, B, right? I'm not going to have sex with the vast majority of people in the planet. That doesn't mean I'm not free to. I just can't because it's not available to me.
What about the risks for your health, though?
There's no evidence of those.
Yeah, there is. Tuberculosis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, AIDS, Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, meningococcal disease, group A streptococcal disease, all things that are the greatest risks for...
Like at a point, a corpse becomes biohazard, right?
Okay, so there's
and then at a point it becomes a hazard to other people, and we're gonna have a Do you like the lockdown? Do you like not getting to do shit? Is that the whole thing? Do you just not want to go outside now that people know you want to fuck dead bodies in Minecraft?
I like Zoom, okay?
Minecraft.
I'm okay
in Minecraft, dude.
Zoom, okay?
Like you just want to make another pandemic and get like some V-bucks out of it or something.
This
like
is
a
literally
commie.
a pandemic now.
Well,
yeah, you're just trying to get a stimmy.
Well, there is an issue. So you know how you can stuff an animal?
Oh God!
Carry on.
If you stuff an animal, like he's just gonna tell you if you stuff an animal. Here, Lacto, you make the argument. It's your argument.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yeah, we can't have the.
Why are you helping him? Why are you helping him?
Yeah. Three arguments. Three arguments. Okay. A. Taxidermy works. B.
Oh yeah, stick your dick in embalming.
No. Stop. Don't go into details.
Yeah. I'll bring napalm in. I'll have him tell you how it feels. It's not good.
You cannot bring in napalm.
It's not good.
The temperature preference.
Okay, wait. Okay, hold. Number two. This is the second. I think. This is a serious part of this. Is that there is sexual behavior that has increased risk of transmission of diseases that we would agree is ridiculous to prescribe, right? So, for example, the vast majority of cases of HIV happen among homosexual men. And the reason for this is because homosexual anal sex and that community is, HIV is prevalent within that practice, okay? Now, if consenting adults make the conscious decision to engage in a behavior that may have negative ramifications, I don't believe the government should necessarily step in and say, you can't do that, A. And then the third point here is just like, perhaps like if the body is posing a biohazard to like the entire community, that's not necessarily a question of necrophilia. That's a question more of just like That's a separate issue. Like
it's a separate issue that you have to
make
address every single time before you enacted anything on these wishes, right? Like you
No,
have to go
no.
through so many hoops just to justify this, and then you have to go through so many hoops just to make this safer. So it's like one of those things that like, why not just legislate based on like what we don't want? You know, like
transmission is also a crime.
Yeah.
Approved.
So,
Well,
like,
No, not if it's consensual.
You cannot consent to contracting HIV.
There's people who consent to having sex with HIV positive people all the time, and there's a risk of transmission of HIV there.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
that.
but that's different than if like I have
illegal.
AIDS and I gave it to J-Boz and was like, surprise.
You sure, right? I agree that's different for a couple reasons, right? But we know that there are people who can consent, who are adults who can consent to having sex with people who are HIV positive, and there is a risk there of transmission of HIV. And they if they're consenting adults, they can be able to make that decision. And now, unless you want to say that HIV people can't have sex anymore, are you willing to make that statement?
I'm looking this
That's
up.
what I fucking thought.
I'm almost certain. No, hold on. So I'm almost certain you can't legally consent to getting HIV.
Yeah, unless you want to say like you can consent to anything, but then you're gonna have another debate here.
You can't. I don't think that's his argument, though, right? Like, it's not that you're consenting to get HIV. You're consenting to have sex with a person knowing they have HIV, right? Which is not
that's the thing. But J-Boz is
right?
saying it's illegal to give someone HIV without them consenting to that in the first place.
Yeah, that's true. But what the argument?
And then
at
Lacto's
play
probably gonna be
here
like, you can consent to
is
that.
Are people allowed to willingly spread disease?
Who is spreading the disease here, though? Like, now I'm a bit confused because is it? So are we saying one, spreading disease to the corpse? I don't think that's what you're saying, right? So other thing, you're saying the corpse is going to spread disease to the person, right? Well, you literally take that same risk with anyone, right?
Double wrap it,
and you could wrap it up, right? Like, you could still put on a condom.
Who's teaming you on?
Exactly.
Who's teaming you on, Prime?
I just want to make sure.
Prime with you?
So no.
Thank you, Prime.
It's an inside job.
I don't know. It's a weird argument. It is a weird argument. I mean, like, it's like, well, I guess this is kind of off this point, but like, can somebody really in their right? Like, is there a state of mind that you can like give genuine consent for use of your corpse prior to death?
Scientific research and stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's so I understand like donating your body for science, but I mean like. The consent of, oh my god.
Well, no, I don't think so, because necrophilia is illegal right now, right?
Well, it is illegal.
Unfortunately.
But isn't there like the idea
in GTA? Yeah,
in GTA.
Yeah.
So okay, I'm curious. All right, J-Boss is asking a few interesting things possibly here, right? So one, can someone, if you're saying
so here, let me give an example. Actually, let me give you an example. The ideals of consent change when somebody's intoxicated, right? It's mainly due to the impaired judgment, et cetera, et cetera. The prospect of death is like, first of all, something that you can't really actualize. We have no idea what this experience is like. And also the prospect of death may alter the ideas of consent. So imagine this world where there's an incentive. Almost there's a financial incentive. Say, I'm going to sell my Minecraft corpse off to a fuck factory. Like, the worst hellscape Amazon nightmare I could ever imagine, because we need money for my family and it's cheaper than a funeral. In fact, I get paid for it. So like, don't you think like you can't genuinely like give consent for your corpse's use? Like,
can I stop you there? Like, would you rather the family not have the money?
I mean, you can make that argument for a lot of things, though, Lactoid.
And I'm making it here. Right?
Okay, so let's see. Let's look at all of the things that a family could do that are illegal to prevent themselves from being destitute.
Here's the primary issue, though, is that in that case, the reason we take issue with it is because it seems like it's coercive on the family's part to do something they don't want to do. They don't want you or a Minecraft character to have sex with their Minecraft character's corpse. They want to just bury the body, right? But because it's legal and because there might be, a Jeffrey Epstein type out there who really loves hoarding Minecraft bodies and having sex with them.
Yeah, that's a
We could-
coercive
Yeah,
consent.
but
And I
work, but people also don't want to go to work, right? Like people also don't want to maybe have to go to the military to get an education. People do all kinds of things because they don't want to. I mean, like I agree from there. Like it happens all the time. And at this point, we're talking about something legal. Then yeah, like capitalism is coercive.
So I think it kind of comes down to, I agree with you, Prime. I think it kind of comes down to like, well, maybe this is a question. Do you agree that society implements some laws for the betterment of society?
Or at least just to
Things that
fit
aren't
an ideal
necessary.
version of what they see the society like
Right,
intended to be.
So jobs are good because they benefit our society, right? And the other things that you might be, quote unquote, coerced into they better society. We need them. They're necessary. But
Can I
necrosexuality, maybe not.
Let me respond, right? So my whole argument here is that like it is better for society to have this be legalized, because whenever you allow individuals to achieve self-actualization, like unless there's like a compelling reason not to, so far, which I have not heard, like generally this is what we want to see in society. There's been a lot of questions about trying to push as far as it can go, and I believe I've addressed them, but I have a question for all of you, and I think all of you are a little bit okay with necrophilia. In a future world, and so let me ask this question: if somebody specifically put in their will, and this is actually like current topic news, because Egypt is proposing a law which would allow husbands to have sex with their dead wives 6 hours after death. Okay, you can look this up.
They flip it? Can a wife have sex with their dead husband?
No, she's a woman.
I love how you're worrying about feminism at this point, right?
I'm a feminist at heart. Feminist at heart, baby.
So like this. So this.
Please make your proposal, Lactoid.
Yeah. So this very much is like a current day issue. Like, if I put in my will, like all I want in my entire life is for me to die, and then 2 hours later for this specific person to have sex with my body. Okay. Do you think who here has a problem with that? If somebody specifically requests it in their will, if we respect wills.
But hold on, that was my question though, is that you don't respect wills. I don't know why you're even bringing this up. You said specifically that you don't respect a dead person's wishes, right? The moment they're dead, they're gone. So like, what difference does it make what's in their will?
Well, hold on. So you're right. I have a different reason why I think in a certain world this should be legal. What I'm asking you is, it seems like the objection I got before from you guys was that you guys believe wills are valuable and you guys believe the wishes of dead people should be respected, when you challenged me on the argument saying, well, what if somebody specifically puts in their will that they don't want to do this? So maybe you guys are being a little bit inconsistent then, if you're not in favor of the will being enforced in this case.
Can I just answer that since I asked that question?
Yeah.
I think the difference is that if you put in your will you want somebody to have sex with that body, you're almost giving them ownership of your body post-death. And
sex ownership?
Well, you get to decide.
It's like a transfer of estate, really.
You get to decide what happens with your estate, and if you decide that you want your body fucked or your Minecraft corpse fucked, then it can be. So I don't think it's inconsistent there, but also I was just trying to see what you believed. I think if somebody puts in their will that they want their Minecraft character's body to have sex with, then that's cool. That's good.
Okay, hold on. All right. So we have at least one person here who is okay with some necrophilia, or in the hypothetical world. Yeah.
But we didn't get to make an opening statement, so you don't know my position, do you?
All right. Okay, well this is good. This is interesting, right? Because I think that when pressed on that issue, most people would say like if you actually care as much as you claim to about the wishes of dead people, and a dead person really wants this to happen to them, how can you be against it?
Our numbers are already dwindling.
This is why this argument is very stacked in your favor, Lactoid.
You can
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Logistically speaking, this is something the state would never want to allow.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, there's just so many things that's going to open up that cause problems, and
So
it
that's
seems
two
like you're just willing to overlook those in
that's two
favor
different
of getting
things.
to do it.
That's two different things, though. That's two different things. One, whether like this will ever happen in reality, right? And whether this should be morally allowed by society, right? We can discuss both of those things, but like let's be clear where we're at. So like I think what he was discussing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lactoid, I think you were discussing more the morality of it all. Am I correct?
Absolutely, right. I think morality is like what underpins our normative changes, right? We should ideally make laws based on what we think is morally good.
That's not the sole reason why we make laws. So if that's
It
like
should
your
be.
reasoning behind, it should be.
Even then, we can just say it's
Well, first of
morally
all, it
bad to
shouldn't
be so
right?
irresponsible with our
Like
legislative
you
practices.
need laws for a plethora of different purposes outside of simply morality. Listen, I know you believe the extent the federal government should be is like a place where you can drop off your garbage, right? Like that's basically where.
That's not true.
Actually, no, you would privatize that. That's fine. But like the idea,
I would there, yeah.
So like I'm talking about like reality. I don't know. Do you want to have this conversation in the perspective of reality?
Well, Prime just said we can't.
No, he said we can have both, but you need to identify which one you're in.
Yeah.
So we can do it from both the morality standpoint and also like the legal standpoint, or like the probability standpoint. But like we should be clear on what we're doing and not like mixed arguments.
Sure. So I guess like with I guess I'll reiterate part of my opening here, right? I think that laws generally should be geared towards a moral end. And especially when it comes to laws legislating people's sexual conduct, right? If you, for years, like how many centuries have like sexual minorities been demonized and oppressed in this country? Like many, right? And now that we're past that, we look back and we realize just how bad that was. And I'm curious if we might not hit a point.
We've only looked back and realized how bad some of that was. There are a lot of things that we look back and refine our hatred of, as well as while we accept the people who may be, say, living through a very normal condition, or at least biologically influenced, we may still condemn the actual act of acting out on a number of sexual proclivities.
Yeah, but a lot of the only arguments that I've heard so far have been arguments that have been used like faultily against like past sexual minorities, right? So
yeah, but just because they've been used faultily against them doesn't mean you can't use it properly against necrophiliacs.
No,
sorry, that's probably not the arguments. But
the arguments
necrosexuals.
The arguments presented have been things like what if it spreads disease, right? That rings like some arguments that certain conservatives were making like back in the 80s and the 60s, right? What if it's bad for society? Like, I mean,
what an abject sexual marketplace, or not marketplace, but like an objective marketplace.
Under the framework that you introduced to us, you're essentially going to enable I don't even want to say it, but you're going to enable a particular type of act.
Yes.
That could be the idea of enabling this, right, is probably extremely dangerous. Enabling people to experience. Do I have to spell it out? Like,
yeah.
Well, he's talking about people who might be attracted.
Unless Prime says no.
A dead body that's not an adult in Minecraft, right? It's like, don't you think there's an issue with like allowing that to be something that's like adopted by society? Isn't that a danger?
Here's the problem, right? Because you're just saying like you're kind of appealing to like incredulity here, right? You're saying like this must be wrong. Like why can't you why would you really accept that? But the reason it like I would argue I think pedophilia is very wrong for a lot of reasons, right? The primary reason is that studies consistently show that it's demonstrably harmful to the child. Demonstrably, right? Scientific evidence. Time after time, studies show that children who undergo this horrible traumatic experience later in life suffer, right? They have PTSD, high rates of PTSD, high rates of depression. It affects brain development, right? There's a lot of...
No one's going to contest this.
No one's going to contest this, right? But like, that's why it's wrong. Those concerns aren't applicable to this discussion about deceased bodies, right? We're not worried about in 20 years a deceased body having PTSD or having depression because it's going to be dirt.
Say the most disgusting and depraved human being in the world decides to take the Minecraft avatar of Cindy Lou Who for a spin and thinks that they want to try it out for reals this time. Instead of putting it in a microwave for a few minutes, they just want the real deal, right?
Okay,
or even say it's legal and he does it and now he's ostracized from his family and then his life just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Okay, whoa. So there's two things.
Ostracize. You like if you do.
Toyo,
if you start doing
that's an
things that
anti. That's an
are,
anti-gay
yeah. Oh
argument.
yeah, it was. It was. Guess what I'm doing? Taking it, and I'm using it against you.
What? Okay, so I don't think the risk of family ostracization should ever be used as a reason against people expressing their sexuality.
It's not just family though. Like it's entire society. Like
So it's genuinely.
imagine if
Sure.
He wants to normalize it.
like
I wanna
think,
normalize
think
generally
of
believed.
or
by
in
and
a Minecraft.
just think of all the
In Minecraft.
peripheral
In
harm
a
I could
Min-
do with
well,
you.
so
Fucking
if I
Minecraft.
know about this.
Okay, if
What
I have
game
to
are we
keep
playing?
saying in Minecraft here, okay, so it is
Boss, I've already
generally
accepted it.
accepted that the vast majority of pedophiles don't like actually act on their impulses, right? Like a vast majority. That's what is generally believed from like psychologists, social scientists, therapists. But like, don't we believe that it creates a moral quandary if we're now essentially like saying, oh well, here is there's a Louis C.K. bit that like does it really well, which is like this
He's
can
canceled.
literally ruin your life if you ever do it. It would destroy your life to like be a pedophile and to act on those impulses. But people still do it, and his joke is like, I'm not gonna finish the joke, but like people still fucking do it, right? So now, what about? Well, my barrier used to be like societal, like demonization, and you're now removing partially that barrier by allowing them to like emulate the act on a real Minecraft corpse. And don't you think that that will begin like a chain of behaviors, right? Isn't that a concern?
Well,
That's
what
Sorry,
if we just
sorry, go
ask? What if we just ask? What if it did? Not that. Do you think it will? What if it did?
I want to run off that because I think this is like an empirical question. Generally speaking, I'm not okay with like prohibiting sexual behavior based on like or like some deeply personal behavior, really, based on like, well, what if it like leads to like these unintended like side effects down the road? I mean, if it does, or if it did, and if we knew for sure it would, I mean, that would be we can prescribe any kind of like behavior if down the line it's going to lead to like a behavior that we specifically do want to prohibit, which we've already talked about why this is like pedophilia is horrible behavior, right? But I first of all, I think that's your burden to prove, and second of all, I think that's not necessarily an argument against necrophilia per se, right? It's an argument against pedophilia, and you're simply saying, well, what if this would lead to that? Well, then obviously I'm against pedophilia. So then maybe we can have some restrictions there. But that's not an argument against like intrinsically the idea of like sex with a corpse, which I think you are against, and I think a lot of people are against, for the same reason that they were against homosexuality, which is a deep internal disgust. I think that's really what's underlying the motivation for the vast majority of people who are against this proposal. I really think so. Is that all of you just find it fucking gross, and you don't want it to happen because it's revolting to you in the same way that conservatives in the '60s found it revolting two men kissing.
So
what if I just don't like entitlement?
You
know what I mean? Like it would guarantee you access to sex, which is like a weird thing. I don't think anybody should be entitled to that under the law.
Are you against fleshlights?
That's not sex. That's masturbation. This would be with another person. I mean, like if you decriminalize the act of necrophilia,
we don't have a law that says men can have sex with women, right? We just don't have a law that says you can't.
Sex
well,
dolls.
yeah. So like he would be wanting to like decriminalize it in tandem with like the maxim that the dead have no rights, right? Like there's nothing there. So that's like guaranteeing and entitling this form of sexual gratification. I don't feel like you should just entitle that under the law, right? Like if you want to do it, you may be able to, but if you're found out about it, it's still illegal because we don't want to entitle it, right? It would lead to like a lot of, I mean, I guess you could say slippery slopes, but like if you make this form of sexual entitlement, I wonder who else would be like, I'm entitled to sex in the form that I find most pleasing because of my certain immutable characteristics, right? Like,
no.
You sure?
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure, because this is the exact, like, you are parroting every argument that was used against the gay community.
They were ahead of their time and hitting the wrong target.
But if it was wrong, then like you have to provide some kind of differentiating factor that makes your argument right now.
Well, I mean, I feel like my stance goes further than the sex one too. Like, I don't think you should be able to like buy and sell dead bodies for anything other than like medical purposes, right?
You
Because
think
like think of all the
dolls-
harm I could do to you with like or your loved ones after you die with your dead body if I had malicious intent, right?
Should I?
Plus,
Yeah,
think
it's
about like
true.
if you were
Now-
prolific
it's now
and I
not
then had access
illegal.
to your body.
Should
It's
I
now
be?
not illegal to film you using a relative's like corpse, right? A corpse of a family's relative, and then just mailing them a copy of it every single day for the rest of your life.
Well, if you're mailing somebody things every day, that can
Well,
be
then that's
harassment.
That's harassment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't
Right,
add
yeah.
other actions on top of it that make it.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
make it-
That's
so there's
fair.
that. But then the other thing is like, are you guys against the legal? Like, would you guys be in favor of illegalizing sex dolls? Like, you say fleshlights is masturbation. Well, how's a sex doll? Sex dolls masturbation. And then if you're okay with sex dolls, like, what's the real difference between a sex doll and like a
Yeah, I mean,
adult?
this seems to just be coming down to the fact that if we legalize it, I'm talking just about laws right now. Just
It's
to
probably
be
like
clear.
that they were alive. To me, it's that they were alive, as well as like the peripheral damages to you that I could do with access to your body, as well as like legal access to, like just for like argument's sake, I guess you could say all bodies. Although there would probably like say you legalize it, there would probably be like a sliver of the pie in all directions that it is illegal to do this for. But like if there was a public market for it, or at least the ability to go and get your corpse, you could do a lot of bad things with that.
So
Outside of bucking it, and the fact that they were alive does mean something.
I want to jump in here. I'm actually a lot more sympathetic to Lactoid's argument than I thought I was gonna be. So there's that. But one, I need to understand exactly the world that he's asking for, right? The Minecraft or GTA world that he's asking for. Before I can actually sign on, right? So I don't find the argument about child corpses, Minecraft child corpses, to be compelling, because like, well, that's the easy restriction. We have restriction on all kinds of things. We have restrictions on sex, right? Like we have sexual activities, right? That you can engage in, but only within a spectrum, right? You go outside that spectrum, for instance, like a lack of consent, it's still a sexual act, but now it's an illegal sexual act, right? So, and we have a law for like minors, right? For, you know, age of consent for minors, right? If that person never reached past 18, well, then they're also off limits, right? It's just an easy regulation to do. So I could work with that. I'm more freedom minded myself, as to like, yeah, we should be able to engage in the things that we want to do. But I'm not sure if this system is actually workable. That's my issue.
Oh yeah, that's 100% like my biggest thing too, is this in reality would just be an absolute like horrific nightmare.
No, yeah, exactly. So I want to ask some questions and dig into this, right? So, who can consent, right? So like the dead person, according to your view of this Lactoid, right? As a dead person has no rights. So we're wiping out wills, right? So we're ignoring that. But then who can consent to this, right? You're a lawyer, so you've dealt with these things, right? In terms of there are two parties that have an equal claim, right? So like this is a person who's, let's say 20-year-old corpse now, right? And there's a mother and a father, right? You would imagine one of them has, both of them have custody over the body, and one says it's okay, other one says it doesn't. How do we adjudicate that?
I think according to Lactoid, it would be irrelevant. I
Well,
don't think
I want him to say it, Lactoid.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so I am skeptical of the idea, generally speaking. I understand it's currently the law, and we could probably think of some kind of schemata to actually, like, you know, we'll figure out like who has a more of interest in like the actual body. I'm skeptical of the idea of property being automatically given to somebody at death absent a will. I'm actually sort of the belief that if there is no will, like the body is either up for grabs or it kind of goes to the government. Now, even if we don't accept this kind of schemata of what I think should be the case, you know, we could have a regulation saying like to fit within your world, or maybe to make it more politically appealing, you could simply say like, if one parent has a problem with it, then it can't happen. I don't know. Like you could do something along those lines, to kind of ease in, kind of see how it plays out. I think you're right, Prime, when you say that like we can have regulations on things, and that doesn't mean like illegalizing it right at the bat, right? While I'm generally in favor of like less regulations on things generally, and including in this, I think that you can be in favor of legalizing this, but also be in favor of some regulations, right? So like to prevent kind of like the biohazard waste that we're kind of worried about, you could have certain licensing requirements. You could have requirements in like cleaning up. Like you could do things that kind of prevent the negative externalities that people seem concerned about here. I think you agree that these negative externalities aren't really getting at the heart of necrophilia or necrosexuality.
Yes. So yeah, and again, I'm a bit more sorry. I'm a bit more I'm closer to the argument than others, right? More sympathetic. So that's why I'm just trying to understand like how this could possibly work. That I just gave an example of, in terms of parents, right? But like, so there's parents, right? And what they want happen the corpse of their child, right? But then there's a loved one, right? There's a spouse, a significant other, who in this world, right, generally are in charge of burying the dead, right? So if I have a long-term girlfriend, right, even if we're not married, I might be responsible for burying her in case she passes, right? So I'm taking custody of the body. But maybe I think it's okay if someone else wants to take custody of the body and do whatever the fuck they want, right? But then her parents might say otherwise. It's just like, since we're talking about property, right, then it's like a property rights discussion. And how do we divide that in this situation?
Yeah, so this is a great question, but it's not actually a question directly against necrophilia or necrosexuality. It's actually a question against just like dead bodies generally, right? Because you could have a situation in which one parent insists their religion, this person must be buried. And then you could have another parent say, well, no, I insist that this person be cremated. And it's both of their child. Like these are the things that are litigated in courts all the time currently, where you have parents disagree on what happens to the body. The necrophilia doesn't add anything new. Like the only thing new it adds is just like one more thing that could happen to the body that parents may disagree about. But like it doesn't introduce a new problem of family members disagreeing on what happens to the body. These are the things that happen all the time in current, like in law, right? People litigate what happens to bodies all the time. And that's I think where the proper place should be is a courtroom on a case-by-case basis for lawyers to make like, or if you want to appear pro se, to make the argument like, this is why I think this should happen. Here are my justifications. And like one of the, and you show that to a judge and the judge can make a decision, right? That there's no reason why we can't have that same system but applied here.
So, okay. What if we knew a person who had died, right? That there's no one around them who has a legitimate claim, or at least no one who gives a shit, right? Like how soon could a person, like a necrosexual, how soon could they get access to that body, right? So there's no one to make a claim against. This person is dead from a bullet wound, not by the necrosexual, but like a bullet wound. Right there, it's a piece of discarded property at this point. This dead body. So could they have their way with it if they take it to a private room? I guess. I
mean, you could. So there's different ways you could deal with this too, right? This is a part I haven't fully figured out yet, right? How we would actually deal with that situation, because you could. This is a question with all property, whether that be a house or a car. If you had somebody who had no descendants and they die and they have a house, like, okay, where does that house go? Who gets the house? There's certain proposals we can think of, right? The government gets the house and then sells it to a top bidder and then uses that money to offset taxation. That could be one proposal, right? That's one solution to the problem. It could be like a up for grabs kind of system where like if you drop money on the ground in the street, like who grabs it first? That could be something that comes up. Or like another thing that could happen is like it could be part of an estate, and then like people could like think, well, what causes was this person like really passionate about? Well, let's like donate it to donate the property to this cause. Like there's different ways to address that issue. none of which are specific to necrosexuality.
Necrophilia.
So
So
the last thing I want to ask, and then I want to open it back up to everyone else. Last thing, is now more directly to necrophilia, is something that other people have touched on before, is the effects on the family. So I'm again sympathetic to the idea that dead people don't actually have any rights. I think we grant them rights because it's easier to divide property that way, right? It's easier for myself, if I write a will, to simply declare this is how it's going to go, rather than the courts, right? Like adjudicating
And they have
different
no way to
claims,
revoke.
right?
Like the dead have no way to revoke the status or the status of non-consent that they entered like upon like or prior to dying, right? Like if I didn't want you to fuck me now, I don't want you to fuck me later. I shouldn't have to like revoke that situation.
I haven't gotten to my point. I haven't gotten to where I'm going. So I'm sympathetic to that argument that they don't have any rights. Maybe I could do that world, but I think it makes sense the world that we live in which we do grant them rights, at least to what will happen to their body and all of that. So I'm okay. But on the other side of it is the family, right? The reason why we take such care and we have such regulations around bodies is because of the effect that will have on the family. There's no way you're going to get unanimous consent from a family that's like these corpses. People should be able to have sex with these corpses, right? Like I could imagine a husband, right, who fucking hates his wife, saying that if she passes away, oh yeah, she can be used for that, and then the effects that would have on the children, right? Like, how could you, Dad? How could you do that? And then with the knowledge that this is a thing that happened to their mom, and then you can preserve corpses for quite a while, right, before they like begin to completely fall apart. You can preserve them for quite a while. So to just have this knowledge, right? I can imagine the nightmare and the PTSD. You were concerned about that previously in terms of like, a child welfare. But how do you square that here, where there will definitely be trauma to the living if you enact this proposal?
Oh, so
Sure.
I quick defense though. You could argue that we do allow things like divorce and stuff, which do have psychological effects on children, and we don't actually regulate divorce.
I want to. Well,
let's
I want
let
to.
Lactoid go because I think like divorce is eventually going to be better for kids.
Well-
That's the
well-
idea. That's like what we accept mostly.
Well, I would say even if it wasn't, it should still be allowed, because when like the reason why like development of psychological disorders, like that's wrong when somebody like crosses a boundary and violates like your bodily autonomy or violates your rights that leads to those outcomes. Like that is what's wrong, right? If you happen to develop some kind of like psychological issues from some activity that doesn't even involve you, I'm less sympathetic to that being a concern. For example, just prior to this, Prime, you brought up an example of like, well, what if the parents disagree on how to dispose of the dead body? It could cause incredible emotional distress to a Catholic or mother who believes that unless the body is buried, like maybe not Catholic, I'm not fully familiar with all the different religious sects, right? But some religious sect, if you're not buried in a Catholic grave, like you're going to go to hell, right? And it could be incredibly traumatizing to that mother if like the son says, well, no, I want to be given to like scientific research. That's what I actually want my body to go to, or I want to be cremated, right? But there comes a point in which it's like, if people having problems or people being like psychologically affected about an action that's not like directly infringing upon them, I just don't have nearly as much sympathy towards that action.
My problem, I hear you on that, but my problem is that sex is different. Sex has always been different, right? There's a reason why physical assault is treated different from sexual assault, right? Both are harms, and in fact, you can walk away from a sexual assault physically in a better shape than a physical assault, right? But we recognize sexual assault is a special sort of harm. And so when people are having sexual acts with dead bodies, right? And we haven't actually explored how far that could go, right? All we've talked about, at least it seems like all we've hinted at, are normal acts, right, that you would do, right, that most people engage in, normative acts with the body. But like if it's sexual, the world of sex is very wide and strange. So there's lots of things you can get up to, right? And so to be able to do that and with no restrictions, because at least in this world, when you're talking about two living people, you have to get that consent. Now that we're talking about a property, right, then there's literally no limit as to what you can do once it's in their custody, right? If it's sexual, then we have to even draw lines as to what the fuck that even means, I guess, maybe. But still, it's a different sort of harm to know that some stranger out there is having their way of your mother's corpse, right? You would agree with that.
Well, let's keep it within the realm of sexuality, because I agree with you that sexual harm can be significantly greater than other kinds of physical harm. And it's true, like the vast majority of sexual assaults don't involve significant physical damage, but they are horrible because they involve a personal invasion that can lead to like psychological ramifications down the line. They can also lead to pretty serious physical harms as well. But I mean, I understand your point here. However, the reason why that's wrong, again, is the initial intrusion onto someone's bodily autonomy. Let's keep talking about sexuality here. What if you have a scenario where a son is gay and has sex with like their male partner, and that causes their family to believe he's going to hell, and that causes them extreme distress? We're not going to say, well, just because the family is like literally having PTSD flashbacks right now about their kid having gay sex, that means that we should like prevent this person from doing this action, because again, personal autonomy is the deciding factor here.
Yeah, okay. I agree with that. And I'm almost done with the slide question, I promise. I want to hear what everyone else has to say. I agree with you there. However, that's because the son, that's his personal autonomy, right? Like he is a relevant person, like applying consent there, right? Like the person that we're infringing in this case is a necrosexual, a completely third party, right, separate from all of this, right, gets to now intrude and say, I want to have sexual relations with this corpse, and someone there is consenting, so someone within the family is consenting, sure, okay, but that's not the same, right, as the deceased actually consenting to this, and which you don't even care about, right? In the scenario you talked about, it's the gay individual taking agency over their own life, right? And saying, well, look, I know this hurts you, right? Because of your religious nonsense. But still, I'm going to live my life. But in this case, they did live their life. They're dead now. And they didn't consent to it. And now some other person gets to intrude into this this private family affair, the private family situation, and then for their own like prurient desires. So that's different, right? Those aren't the same.
I hear you, but I think maybe a fundamental disagreement then is just, I don't particularly morally value, other than some effects it has, I don't particularly morally value the idea of like the family unit, right? I don't think that just because like something is family, that means that you have more of a right to not have certain effects happen to you. So if I have a gay son who has sex with a male partner and that deeply offends both of their parents to the point where they're having like PTSD flashbacks, like I personally don't see that that's much different than like somebody who's having sex with a dead body and that causes like deep PTSD flashbacks for one family or the other, right? I'm sure the necrosexual's family probably is also like kind of weirded out by this behavior. I think the key here of what makes the act wrong has to be like, does it involve a personal invasion, or does it encourage personal invasions over like people, over actual living moral agents and subjects, which I don't think necrophilia does. And beside that, if you care, you would agree that if somebody who dies does put in their will, yeah, like I'm okay with my partner having sex with my dead body, then that's almost identical to like the gay partner example, right? And you would have to agree with that.
Sorry, what do I have to agree to? State that again.
Sure. If the person dies and puts in their will, like I want my partner to have sex with me when I'm dead, and then like the family's outraged by that, I mean, you would agree, like, it doesn't really matter that the family's outraged.
That would be agency. That would be me. And which I'm willing to do. I'm willing to give agency to dead individuals, right? So I'm
Yeah,
fine
I'd be
with
willing
that.
to concede that if you
Yeah.
put it in your will that you can do that. However, legally you probably like morally you could if it's in your will, but legally you shouldn't.
Okay.
So I was just gonna ask.
I don't give
Oh,
bodies
sorry,
agency. That's a fundamental disagreement, I think. But go ahead.
So I was just gonna ask. I mean, at this point, and I could be wrong, it sounds like necrophilia, necrosexuality is not something people inherently disagree with. It's the implementation in society that people disagree with.
Hey,
So
dude,
and
I
that's,
disagreed with it for thousands of years.
I disagree with that.
well, okay. I'll rephrase, or let me ask a question. Why don't we propose some we keep proposing hypotheticals to Lactoid, right? Like, what if we do this? What if kids are upset this way, or parents, or distant relatives, or you find a body just laying around? Like, what are all of these things? We're proposing a lot of things that we think would be like detrimental if we legalized it. But what if we legalized it? And I think and Prime and Lactoid, you guys were talking about this a bit, and we regulated it heavily. Like, let's say the only people that a necrophiliac, necrosexual could have sex with was somebody who did put in their will that they wanted somebody to have sex with their body. That's it. That's the only circumstances. So who here would disagree with that? If that's the only avenue, legal avenue for it, who would disagree with that?
I'm against commoditizing bodies as a whole.
I reject the foundation of this, right?
Mhm.
Like human beings aren't dirt, right? Like that's like
Well, dirt can't say I want somebody.
it's not even that I'm against or for, right? Like this argument's not even against or for necrosexualism, but it's like the argument's not sound. Humans decided thousands of years ago that bodies are not dirt.
Yeah,
they decided a lot of things 1,000 years ago that we don't care about.
No, we
They decided it for us, and we still hold these beliefs. Like as a society, a majority of us believe it, and a majority decides.
But they like
can't change it.
People. Wait, and people, there wasn't a majority for a lot of decisions that we made, and we still made them because they were right, or they were good, or they were better for us. Majority doesn't always rule. Might isn't always right. I would say.
Well, slavery is a good point there, right? Because I mean, slavery was like the law in how many countries for how many years, and then we decided just because it happened in the past doesn't mean we should keep doing it. Like it's morally wrong to do this practice for independent reasons, and then they had a discussion about what those reasons were. And thankfully, we outlawed the practice in America and most other countries, right? Despite the fact it was happening for hundreds and hundreds of years, back to the Roman times.
I do have two questions on this. Would you? Well, I'll just ask the first one. Would you regulate safe practices with the body? Like after
can I just say something?
They're going to be forced. Yeah.
Lactoid could grant us all of these things and still win the debate. So he can say you could regulate it. You have to wear a condom. You have to wear a hazmat suit when you do it. Any requirements, so long as the act is still allowed, it's legal, right? There's some avenue for it. Lactoid wins, right? So that's what I'm trying to get at. Is it seems like we're not finding an inroad here to get a concession. Does that?
Well, it's not a concession I'm looking for. I'm just trying to see if he's like. Are you for regulating the use of this body?
I can accept, I think, like was rightfully pointed out, doesn't necessarily go to the question of legalization. Personally, I'm not in favor of regulating the use of your own private property just because it may harm you. I'm okay with people buying particularly dangerous items. Like if they want, I've got it, people own guns, right? Owning a gun in the house is statistically somewhat dangerous. I own a gun, right? Just having it in the house is somewhat dangerous, but I should be allowed to do that because I'm consenting to that risk, right? I'm consenting to the risk of my own private property.
Yeah, but what happens if you use, let's just say, a public commodity called like water, and you didn't take the proper practices, you end up getting a bowel disease, then pass that on into the water supply, and the water supply doesn't filter that out, and then you end up affecting a whole city to a whole nation.
Right, and that now we have a whole different discussion, right? I'm not okay with regulating things that harm oneself, but if it's having a significant effect on people around them, then I think it's within the domain of regulation. So I should be allowed to cook with oil, but I shouldn't be allowed to dump 30,000 gallons of cooking oil into the water supply, right? I should be allowed to own a gun. I shouldn't be allowed to shoot my gun through my window and like hit my neighbors, right? There's specific regulations that we have to prevent risk to other people, but I'm generally not in favor of like state paternalism, where we're saying like the big brother knows what's best for you. No, let people do their drugs, let people smoke their cigarettes, let people drink their alcohol, as long as they're not like forcing it down the throats of people around them.
Yeah.
I mean, to be clear, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just have one more question along these lines. Oh, not that's. Oh yeah. Would you deem it immoral and regulable to regulate sex dolls with lolly-like imagery?
I would only find it. In a hypothetical world, I would only find it permissible if we had evidence that like it led to demonstrably bad outcomes, in terms of like encouraging a significant rise in pedophilic behavior, which everybody in this panel agrees is wrong, specifically because it has bad effects on the children and their lifetime, basically their entire life. In the same way that like dumping cadmium into the water supply is bad because it raises cancer rates in the area.
Yeah,
right?
So I think it sounds like Lactoid. Like if we did legalize necrophilia or necrosexuals being able to engage in sex with corpses,
Thank you, sir.
And you're welcome. And it had demonstrably bad outcomes, like horrendous, right? You would say, oh yeah, okay, well we should probably keep that illegal then. Is that fair to say? Now I know you're going to say the self-actualization thing, but you already agree. I think it's at least some. Well, I guess I don't know your prescriptions on how society should be structured, but like you can't take your gun and not fire it at your neighbor, but just fire it up in the air, right? Like that's illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll answer this straightforward. Like, yeah, I think that if you legalize this behavior and it led to outcomes that specific outcomes of like infringement upon people's bodies and their person and their property, and it led to like a massive rise in this, and the harm there was significant enough, then I would be in favor of regulating this behavior. But that's not unique to necrosexuality. That'd be the same with any kind of sexual behavior, right? So if homosexual behavior had like horrible effects that we didn't even think of, which it doesn't, like based on everything we're seeing now, but if it actually did have horrible effects, and then yeah, I'd be like, okay, we got to roll back gay marriage, we got to roll back the Supreme Court cases legalizing gay sex, because here
why do you keep harping on the fact that just because these arguments have been used against people who have I don't even know the right way to phrase this, but like because there is nothing inherently wrong with being gay or other sexual proclivities that we have stopped scrutinizing over time, like that this means you have to walk that all back. Like if we say you can't fuck dead bodies, that doesn't mean you can't fuck like your boyfriend. Like
it's because you're not presenting a good
Let me answer.
I guess
right?
I shouldn't be.
This is I guess comes down to like a methodology of thinking. Okay, now I believe in logical consistency, and part of logical consistency is forming a consistent model in which you take external stimuli, apply it to the model, and you get a result. Now, ideally, just because you have, if the model is the same, like arguments for one thing, the arguments should have to be, you should have to show a difference in order to act like a different model to actually affect the outcome, as opposed to simply different inputs, right? So when you say like something is gross, like why is something being gross morally wrong? Well, it wasn't wrong then, but it is now. Then obviously the next question is, well, why? And then if the answer is it just is, that's not very satisfying.
Different inputs should have a difference on like the output. Like that's exactly how that should work.
We're not like barring sexual proclivities. We're barring specific sexual proclivities because of their potential for an acute and like maximized harm, like whether it be logistically or like morally, right? Like it's not damaging. Even if you were to follow like the most critical like line of reasoning, it's not damaging in the same ways that it would be to fuck a dead body just like to be gay, right? Like
No,
it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
I think no. Wait,
That's like that. Then you would be like, oh, okay, so if we let people fuck dead bodies, we should let them be pedophiles in Minecraft, right? Like because that's a sexual proclivity and you're regulating it.
No. So, like I said,
See how it doesn't work that way?
No, you have to show why there is a different model, right? You have to show like we are against harm to children. This is why we insert like the sexual activity of pedophilia. It like we know that it is inconsistent with making sure harm doesn't come to children. Therefore, we have a credible reason to not allow it. When you say things like here is like something that's wrong because it's gross, right? And then like that's the reason, right? The reason you think it's wrong is because it's gross. Then the question is, well, like, but this other thing other people thought was gross. What's your reasoning for not being against that? Well, I just don't think it's gross. Personally, that's not a very satisfying answer, right? Because I'm not really given any I guess entry into like your logical framework here. You're basically just because I can say this about any moral position, right? I think like slavery is good because I just think that not having slavery is gross. And then your answer would be, and then your question could be like, well, like what do you mean it's gross? And I could say I just feel that way. Well, I mean, if you just feel this way, then we're not really within the realm of argument anymore. You're just proclaiming that you think something, and then you're not actually addressing why.
Disregard for this. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah. I wanted to like work off of something you said, Ragnaraka. So I feel like there's been a lot of ground given that is not necessarily earned, right? And Ragnaraka was actually trying to take some of it back. This argument hinges on corpses just being objects, right? And I think Ragnaraka made a good point that like they're not, right? Like society considers them different for a reason because they were alive. They were alive. They were a person. We have feelings attached to it, right? And because of that, society has deemed like if that's the basis of morality, right? Now, morality
like fundamental
is, like,
extensions of rights to the dead.
Yeah, right. And if our society's morality says that these people were important, right, and that their bodies should be given a certain level of respect, and that respect means don't fuck it. Then that like makes sense, right? It makes sense that we have that. Like I don't. So saying that it's simply an object and we can do with it as we please, I don't think you've earned that territory, right? And that's the ground that we've been fighting on this entire time. So I kind of want to roll that back.
Yeah, so it's like prove that humans are dirt, and then we can continue the conversation. You know, it doesn't line up to me.
Yeah, regardless of your perspective, if you fail to like identify a corpse as the person it was, that's a personal problem. That's your own personal perspective issue. If you project that perspective onto everybody, that's just disingenuous. It's silly. Like as a society, we clearly associate the identities of the dead with who they were when they were living, to the extent in which like we hold these ceremonies like since the beginning of humanity. We've always treated them this way, and we've created entire theologies to explain like what exactly happens. The world has literally like turned on these, and none of this is logical, right? But there's a lot of morality that is based around this. This is like a societal morality. I think it's a weak argument when you say, well, humans are dirt. It's like, yeah, sure, scientifically, edgy atheist, fedora hat, like kind of argument. Like I get it.
It's not like, a fedora.
I know it's.
Like, it's a don't tread on me trucker cap.
Well, what I'm saying is like we can't when we assign these things. Like this is the reality is like perhaps morality isn't always logical, and it shouldn't be logical. This is why instead of fertilizing farms with the corpses of our loved ones, and back in like the 1700s, we buried them. We took extreme resources to bury them at the time when we didn't have a lot. Like we make those choices because we still respect the dead like they are the living. And even though, sure, scientifically, chemically speaking, quote unquote, they're dirt, in reality, the symbolic impact, not even symbolic impact, but the true impact it does have on humanity subconsciously affects us. It's been with us since like the dead have started to die around us.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing, Lactoid? Just it'll be real quick. I do think, Lactoid, I do think that you said the dirt thing to be a little edgy and to be controversial for sure. But I know that you do believe that. But I think that if you were trying to be maximally persuasive, you probably wouldn't.
I gave a challenge, right?
No. I get you.
Why are you helping him?
I'm not trying to help him, but when we're saying these things about like, think people did things a long time ago, or we have these ceremonies and stuff, like all Lactoid has to say is like, I'll just roll back, I'll retreat from any claim I've ever made, and I'll just say that like, if we regulate it completely, fully, as much as you would want it to be, would you allow necrophilia legally under very, very certain circumstances? And then
the regulation to so many people would be like, oh, okay, so I don't want it allowed at all.
Yeah, we need to say no to this a second
well,
time.
but you have to. Yeah, okay,
like,
but we didn't actually
move on from this, please. Like we already said no to this.
But you're presenting.
Let me.
All right, dude.
So, I think what's being highlighted now is the underlying reason that I brought up before, right? Let's imagine we're in Saudi Arabia for a second, and you have like a TV show in Saudi Arabia where you have an imam and you have like a gay activist, and the gay activist is saying like advocating for the right to love my partner, and the imam is saying, look, our society has prescribed this for hundreds of years. We agree this is wrong. We've always agreed this is wrong. Our people agree this is wrong. You will cause a lot of people a lot of upset if you go ahead and you do this activity. This is the exact same line of logic as was just handed to me. Bodies aren't dirt. Like, we've agreed as a society that they're not. Like, as a society, we place value on them. Like, this isn't actually like, it's not an argument. It's like, I think J-Boss was pretty like honest when he said it's not logical, right? And if you would just want to, I mean, if the concession here is just, we know it's not logical, we just think the society thinks it's wrong, so it's wrong. Then you can justify anything.
The admonishment of the act is logical, and it's based on illogical reasons.
The logic of it being bad isn't justified at all. You're not justifying it at all.
You're just saying society has agreed.
You're just saying 1,000 years. Like, it's not an argument.
Yeah, people keep bringing that up. Like, we've always agreed this way. So, but for thousands of years, we've always placed value on like the remains of humans we put in the dirt. Yeah, in Saudi Arabia, for hundreds of years, they have agreed that gay people like deserve to have their heads cut off. And how are you going to argue against this unless you're willing to?
Significance between the relationship of people in general? Is that what this means? Like, there's no significance to identity. There's no significance to the relationships of the people. What
it means is that when you're going to prevent somebody from self-actualizing, when you're going to prevent somebody from expressing their sexuality, like the point I'm trying to get across is just saying like, we've always thought it's wrong. Society thinks, like, I don't care. I mean, now maybe you do. Maybe like if you're going to say like, yeah, it's not logical, like we just think this way, I can't convince you at that point. You have essentially said this argument or this topic is beyond argument. It's not even like a thing we can debate. This is oftentimes what comes down in religious debates, right? Like, it's just faith. Like, I just have faith that this is real. You cannot convince me. I never argue.
Monarchy. Like,
so whatever ridiculous comparison you want to make, go ahead. I don't really care. There is absolutely quantitative proof that people have like a reaction in their brains that identifies bodies as like people, right? Like it associates their living identity with their dead body. Like, and you know what? Like, roll your eyes all you want, but like, how is that just like not true? How is that like not relevant?
It is true, but you can say it's true, and it still doesn't challenge the argument at all.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm not trying to take Lactoid's side here, but like, you're not making an argument.
The argument is it's been this way, therefore it should continue being this way.
Like, you can justify anything. You can justify slavery. You can justify
the idea that we begin
anything.
To suddenly disassociate
apartheid. You could justify anything.
Yeah. In fact, one of the arguments oftentimes for apartheid, and when you go back in the past, like the arguments were, well, like I just feel a revulsion around these people. Like, they're not my people, right? This is the argument. Like, again, it's not like a logical argument. Like, how do you fight?
Well, we don't have an inclination to like as human beings to like suddenly disassociate like beings with corpses and what happens to those corpses. So to say it's like somehow not like creating harm. I mean, essentially, like you're
Talk about like oppressive regimes and not like the
Yeah,
American
yeah.
democracy that you brought up in the beginning.
I'd like to
Irrelevant.
like jump on J Boss's point. You haven't proven that society could or should do this, right? And specifically treating bodies as purely objects, right? Because like that's what your argument hinges on. Everything hinges on this, right? If that's not true, then I think this whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, you haven't gotten to the delineation between like when you become not a person anymore, and it seems that there's an axiomatic belief that like you do have like fundamental rights that transcend your status of living.
And
right?
and
Like,
and 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 beyond that, though, there's also that like this association that we make, right? There's a reason why like statues and symbols are important to us, right? That we commemorate certain things.
yeah,
in our
legacy is
society.
often regarded as one of the most tangible forms of an afterlife that one can attain. And I
Exactly.
believe that you hold this to be true too, Lactoid.
Exactly.
Unless you think that having a legacy and progeny is not as important.
They're not
But like
mutually
through
exclusive.
the
Wait.
usage of your corpse as a commodity, I could harm that.
Toyola, do you think that if we have a Confederate statue and somebody's only argument for keeping that Confederate statue is it's our history, like it's always been there, do you find that a compelling argument to keep the Confederate statue?
Yeah, for them, and I would just be an asshole to them and say like, fuck them.
So Lactoid.
Well, I'm not gonna
Lactoid,
say fuck you guys because I kind of like you guys. So.
Well, I do want to argue. So, do you agree that there's certain scientific stats that could lean towards this would affect people psychologically and the way that people look at other people and how people value other people post allowing this?
What if I killed you and then like after I got out, I get what I want? If you know what I mean.
Oh my god.
Like,
my
what
God.
I
In
want.
Minecraft,
In the
Minecraft,
game.
Minecraft,
So-
Yeah, in Minecraft, like if I find the player and then I get what I want.
we
Very
need
nice.
we need to focus on like like one thing, like one line of questioning at a time, right? Because he hasn't actually answered that fundamental core of this argument, right? Like that the bodies are objects, and that society should break the connection that they currently have, the emotional connection that they have to corpses, right? Like you need to prove that part.
Did he make that claim? Did
So-
I mean,
Yeah,
I
he
was-
did. He said
Did
they're
he?
objects.
Where are we
Yeah.
deciding?
Well,
that-
he thinks they're objects, but I didn't hear him advocate that we should treat them that way all the time.
He wants to commodify corpses
Yeah.
fully. Like this wouldn't extend to just sex.
Wait,
like,
this is
could
this is a
really-
much
it's
stronger
post-comment.
prescription. This prescription goes way further than just like necrophilia.
He
Yeah, it's
compared-
the
he compared-
commodification
he
of
compared
corpses.
to fleshlights. Of course, he's
Yeah.
like saying like
No,
like,
I get that, but that's his own belief. Lactoid, would you legitimately say to a family who had their mother pass away from cancer that like, no, you can't cherish this corpse? You would say
That's
that
a
you can't do that.
That's a bad way to question that, because
Well,
then
right,
he would be
okay.
like, "Yeah, I would swallow the correct answer and say sorry. I know that this is like, like he would go against his own intuition.
No, he would
and
say
then
that.
swallow it
Oh,
and be
he's
like,
right
"Hey,
there.
they're
I mean,
there."
I
He
don't
wouldn't
know,
have to be
Lactoid is
like,
right
"Fuck 'em."
here.
Well, yeah. Let's let him answer.
So
Yeah, so I would be my ultimate goal here is to normalize and legalize this behavior. Would I ever be like callous when faced with a distressed person? I wouldn't, right? If I was with a mother whose son was gay and she was having a complete breakdown over it, I'm not going to taunt her over that. I'm not going to say, "Ha ha, your son's gay. Like, how do you feel like knowing that your family's like your religion is useless?" Like, I'm not going to do that because I think that like it's just not who
You
I
wouldn't
am.
be like, "Hey, it's not bad to be gay. It's nothing to be worried about." Like, I know that you may believe this, but like contrary to popular belief, it's not a
bad
horrible
someone's
thing.
having sex with your dead son right now.
So I fundamentally believe it's not bad, but if I'm faced with a distressed person who, you know, by being an asshole, I'm not going to convince them anyway. Like, I'm not going to be an asshole to them. That's not actually answering the question about whether or not this is like a good prescription or not.
So you're
Yeah,
just
the
being nice.
condolences isn't an argument. Like, to tell someone like, you wouldn't tell
Yeah.
a grieving mother that, like, of course you wouldn't. Even if you think like the son should have died, you're not going to tell a grieving person that. Like, that's just inflammatory for inflammatory's sake.
Yeah,
Like
are we gonna count?
he's gonna be cordial no matter what, right? Like it's a stupid argument to be like, you wouldn't tell someone, oh, it's okay either way because he's property. Like obviously you swallow that pill for that discussion, but like in the long run, he believes that they're property, like to be commoditized and sold.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about the fundamental properties? That's why this is wrong. Wouldn't it be the value of that person's ability to consent, or wouldn't it be the value of that person's life? Like we have to kind of identify where exactly does this person's life kind of have value, I guess, because we've set a value on when life begins. When does it end?
Well, we don't actually there's a disagreement about when life begins, right? There is somewhat of an agreement about when life ends, which is, I mean, my position is when brain activity fully stops, and the decaying process begins. That person's dead. Like they're not coming back, right?
That's an agreement on when like the body stops functioning. However, when someone ceases to exist as a person is a different argument, though. Like
a vegetable.
would have to. Yeah, you'd have to go through like legacy as well as like people who aren't active in that form. But like you can affect people like after they've died in meaningful ways, right? Like I could affect your progeny, I could affect your legacy, I could affect the things that you've worked for, I could detriment them all with access to your body.
You can affect other things, but you can't affect them. They are gone, right? The
personality, the memory of you is an effect of you, right?
No, the personality, like the actual individual, the personality, the synapses, right? What makes you you? All the arguments like that that we use to define the beginning of life, right? None of those exist, right?
Yeah, but even you conceded in saying a legacy is like one of the most impactful things about you. That's the way that you affect the world around.
I don't recall
like what personal.
Also, we don't define people as we don't define like personhood through like synapses firing.
Okay, so I personally do define like a person as some kind of like human brain activity. I think that if you like cut off somebody's head and their brain like goes gone, like they're not a person anymore. They exhibit no level of brain activity. They exhibit no level of personality. I mean, this is just the pro-life, pro-choice debate. We can debate this. I don't think it's. I mean, I guess it could be something, but I think it's a pretty straightforward argument that here's another let's go back to my challenge, right? So you guys think that it's still a person, like even though there's literally no personality. Okay, well let's wait 4 months, like in a bog or like in a swamp, and now it's like a pile of dirt, indistinguishable from any other pile of dirt. If I go up to that dirt and fuck that piece of dirt, is that morally wrong?
Sorry, hold on. Before we do this, again, you guys keep distracting from this, and I want an answer here. I'm gonna let it go, right? So what is the utility for society to change the way it's operating? Right? So you're making a claim that we should change the way that we've operated for like ever, pretty much, right? I don't know of a society that's allowed for this, right? So like, but there might be. But you're making the claim that we should change it and it has a certain level of utility, right? Yep. I think others would argue that there's a greater utility for society, right? Even if it's just emotional. That we keep things the same way, right? Like, what is the utility that we should change how we view bodies, right? View corpses, to equate them with dirt, right? Or that we should like break that emotional connection, which is why we have that perspective in the first place, right? Like, why should humanity do that? Like, you would have to teach your kids, right? You'd have, like, it'd be so weird. A child would still have an attachment to their mother's corpse, right? Like, seeing their mother dead, like, they're still gonna say, hey, that's my mom, right? And if they saw you hurting the corpse, right, like taking a hatchet to it, right, they'd be freaked out about that because that's my mom, right? My mom doesn't disappear because the light has gone out of her eyes. That's still my mom. We have to teach them, oh no, the moment that she died, right, that she succumbed to the disease, it doesn't matter. It's just a corpse now, right? And so anything can be done with it, right? So like, obviously it's silly for you to be having these emotions, and that's not exactly what you're saying. I don't want to put those words in your mouth, but like, why should we change? What is the utility there? Like, prove that before we can do anything else.
Right. I think there is greater utility on devaluing the idea of a dead body being the person. right? Not only do they not exhibit any of the traits of the person, but this belief is pernicious in that it prevents how many hundreds of potentially good organs from being donated to children, how many potentially good bodies from being donated to medical research, and also, like, you know, again, I personally value self-actualization, right? Personal sexual self-actualization. If you want to, like, engage in sexual behavior that you find pleasurable, like, in order for government to come in and stop you, they have to show you why it's wrong.
Yeah, we're telling you that you haven't proven that it doesn't harm the person. You're just saying that it isn't the person, and you're sitting on that axiomatic difference, but you're not like explaining why it's in any way better than ours.
But I'm not on that level. That's your argument. That's not the argument I'm making. I'm asking, why should you're valuing this other person's sexual delight, right, over
deviance?
Deviance, yes, sexual deviance over the feelings, the natural feelings that human beings have about their family members and their family members after they've passed, right? That's what you're doing, right? And saying, well, I'm denying this third person who I don't give a fuck about, right, their ability to get off, right? Like, well, fuck them. We deny people the ability to get off all the time. So what is utility for society that we have to change everything for this extremely tiny population, an extremely tiny population, so that some of them can get off? Like, this would be like the change that you're proposing would be huge. It would be one of the biggest societal changes ever. Right? Biggest out changes ever. People complain about like having to call our trans brothers and sisters like he or she by their pronouns, right? This is like a monumental shift in human behavior. And for what? For someone to get their dick off, like for some fucking weirdo to like jerk off to fucking like anime corpses, like just do that, right? Like all of us who have some sort of weird deviant behavior, right? Me too, right? Like find an anime that covers it, right, and jerk off to that. So like, why should society go through this entire monumental change just for like the fraction of a fraction percent that are necrosexuals?
So
why should they?
Yeah, well, so I will point out, you brought up trans people. Everything you just said could apply to trans people.
No,
why should society
address the point? Address the point.
Yeah, right. Right, and so I thought I already did when I talked about how I think, like, just because other people like get offended or feel like bad about other things occurring, I don't think a wrong has occurred unless there's some kind of like personal like imposition or some kind of violation.
Trans people's pronouns is not refocusing the entire way that we behave as a society.
Hold on, if we live in a society, if we live in a society where 99% of people like felt like Saudi Arabia felt deeply offended at the fact that it's gay people, do you think that like then now being gay should be wrong because 99% of people are deeply offended and deeply traumatized?
99% of people in Saudi Arabia do not make up the majority of humanity.
Yeah, like answer this question.
So let's say they did. Let's say they did. Let's say
no. I'm not playing with your fucking hypotheticals. Address this point with something reasonable, logical, that actually can prove your argument.
Okay, the only thing I can do here is to compare it to like potential examples or real world examples. That's the only way I can answer, right?
You just tried to propose
well, that's what I'm saying. That's the only way I can do this, right? If you live in a society in which 99% of people in the entire world believe that it's deeply wrong to have gay sex, like I still think
if your argument is only capable of being supported in hypotheticals, then you're already admitting that it's like not that it's like unreal.
No, why is that the case?
Well, because if you can't like actually base your claim in like reality for it to like even be remotely functional.
I can so all is that the reason I can use a hypothetical here is because I think it's illuminating a principle that we all hold to some extent or another, and we all hold it.
It's not. Look, okay, so like I'll engage with your hypothetical. I still want you to engage with my thing directly, right? But I'll engage with your hypothetical, right? It is different. These two things are not analogous, right?
It's like false equivocation.
There's a false equivocation. Two people, or maybe more, who are of the same sex, right, are being denied their ability to enact agency upon themselves, right? Agency upon their own actions and their own love, right? We should not interfere with that. That if these people want to come together, right? What business are the rest of societies, right? To do that. In this case, right? It is my business. My mother happens to be still alive. It is my business what happens to my mother's corpse. It is absolutely my business, right? I understand that you have you personally, you think that when she dies, that she's just a corpse. I get that, right? That's fine that you have that belief. That's okay. But you haven't proven why I should change my feelings, like why we should make this societal level change. Literally, I can't think of a bigger change right now. I'm sure we could, but like I can't think of a bigger change in human behavior than the one you're proposing, right? And for the purposes of a few, right, and their desires, right, their sexual desires, right? Why should we do any of that, right? It's not as if like my mother is like in her second life is finding a new lover, right? And they're going to go off and do things, right? It's some random motherfucker who has no claim to her. Who has no claim to her, who wants to have sex with her. So, like, why should we do that? So engage with that.
I think we have to have a fundamental axiomatic difference here. On principle, I do not value third parties' outrage about somebody's personal sexual decisions at all.
No, it's not third party. See, that's what you're doing. You're trying to sneak that in. It's not a third party. Just as if my mother was alive, right? Like what happens with her, like has an effect on me, right? We understand that within a family unit, people have a claim to each other. Not like I'm not using the right word here, but like what happens to one member in a family unit affects others, right? That's a thing, right? And we extend this into death. We extend that into death and saying that what happens to their body affects us, right? Seeing their body be torn apart by dogs, right? Offends us. Like seeing, maybe seeing a doll wouldn't matter to me because it's an object or whatever, but it would matter to me if I hit my mic. It would matter to me if my mother's body was torn apart. So like you're asking for this change. You're saying like, well, we have an axiomatic difference, right? You're hiding behind it. No, but that's not what I'm asking for you. I get that you have a difference, right? That's okay that you have a difference. It's okay you see it differently. Why should everyone else adopt your perspective, right? Like you have not given a reason to make this fundamental change in society. You still have not done that. You have to substantiate that before we could do literally anything else.
How would I even substantiate that? My goal, my
petition society and get more than half of them to agree with you.
I don't care if half of society agrees with me. My personal goal is to assert my own ethics, okay? And my ethics are that people's own personal sexual conduct is more important. That the self-actualization is more important than you say it's not third party. By definition, it is third party, even if they are affected by it, right? They are a third party. They're not directly involved in the sexual activity. Now, I think that somebody's personal sexual self-actualization is more important than the outrage of third parties. That's my personal ethics. Now, the reason why I'm trying to convince people is because that satisfies my personal ethics.
Does it? Okay. Third party, right? So I'm not involved. There is a man who is going to sexually assault a woman that I've never met, and her and I have never had any contact, right? Like now we can understand that the woman, like it will make like. It affects her, right? And that's going to be a problem for her in a second, right? But should it be a problem for me? I don't know this woman. I've never talked to this woman, but somewhere, like right now, someone's going to get sexually assaulted. Should it matter to me?
I think your feelings on this subject are not relevant to why it's wrong, okay? Why it's wrong is because the effect it's having on the individual that's actually being directly involved in that situation, the non-third party.
So as a society, we shouldn't have any sort of care for the well-being of others, right? That doesn't matter.
No, I'm not saying that, right?
Yeah, that's what you just said.
No, okay. So then I must have misspoke. Okay, what I'm trying to convey is that we should care about the well-being of others, right? But our personal like moral outrage at a situation, like that outrage in of itself, isn't the reason why sexual assault is wrong, right? The reason sexual assault is wrong, I know, but I'm explaining myself, right? Okay. The reason I think it's wrong is because you have somebody, a non-third party, who's being directly violated, and it's going to have a lot of negative consequences from that violation. Okay, just because the third parties are outraged doesn't change the fact that it is wrong. In the same way that, like, if we live in a culture with a strong rape culture, where let's say nobody was offended, that wouldn't change how wrong it is. Even if there was no outrage, it would be equally as wrong that the rape occurred, even if everyone else is fine with it. It doesn't matter what other people are okay with.
Do you subscribe with if there's injustice anywhere, right? There can I'm gonna fuck up this quote. Fuck. That if there's an injustice anywhere, then there's no justice anywhere. Fuck.
It's Martin Luther King. It's if there's injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Thank you. Do you subscribe to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's an injustice of a person being assaulted, right? And that as a society, we should have a care for the well-being of others, right? That we should take care of our fellow man and woman, right? So like it affects me, right? It's not simply moral outrage. It's that we can recognize sexual assault is damaging to society. That is a crime against us all. It's not, if something like that stands, then it's a problem for all of us. It doesn't matter. I don't know her, right? That humanity's empathy for each other is like the most basic inherent good that we have, right? That's something that we should value. So that me having empathy for her or this other woman, that makes sense, right? And I should act on that empathy, right? That she's being violated.
I do have two interjections.
Right, and I've agreed with everything said so far. We should care for one another, right?
Okay,
let me just again, if we lived in a culture like a strong rape culture where everyone was okay with the sexual assault, do you understand what I mean when I say it's still wrong? It's equally as wrong as if we live in a culture where everybody thought it was wrong. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Right. What I'm saying, the reason it's wrong is entirely independent from the outrage of the third parties. The outrage is good.
I'm not talking about outrage, but you're mistaking my point because I'm not talking about outrage, right? It's empathy, right? It's empathy. It's building a society that is based on the morals of the least harm to others, right? And the least harm would be that this person is not sexually assaulted. This woman I've never met is not sexually assaulted, right? That would be the least harm to society. And then in terms of necrophilia, the least harm to society is that this person is corpse is buried into the ground and no one fucking touches it, right? It causes the least harm to myself and my family, right? And it causes some harm to this necrosexual, right? Like they have a desire, just like as we would do the same thing again with pedophilia, right? There are others who want to carry out these acts, but we recognize that despite the general desire for people to act on their sexual agency, that the harm that will be done to those children, right, outweighs what the sexual freedom of this random other person, right? And so the harm done to the family, even though they aren't directly affected as you've described it, right? The harm to them is greater than this other person getting their fucking rocks off. So like, why should we, again, as a society, make that change? What is the utility in us like superseding the harm, the greater harm to family units, right, and to friends, of course, too, for the desires of these random motherfuckers?
Okay, I believe I've answered the question. I know you don't think I have, right? This is the dispute here. You think I'm dodging the question? I believe I've answered it a couple times. I also really need to use the bathroom, so I'm going to try my best to answer it, and then I'm going to have to use the bathroom real quick, and then I'll be right back.
That's fine.
So my logic here is very much, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, okay? So if we lived in a culture where everybody thought rape was fine and a rape occurred, it would be equally as wrong if we lived in a culture where everybody thought it was wrong and the rape occurred. So now in my position is that the opinions of everybody else, like while I would hope they think rape is wrong, because I think that is bad for individuals within a society, the simple fact that they hold that opinion doesn't affect the wrongness of the action, okay? In the same way, where if we lived in a society where 99% of people thought being gay was wrong, doesn't matter on the actual wrongness of the action, just because 99% of people are deeply disgusted with the behavior, right? So we have one example of where a behavior is wrong, even if everybody likes it, right? Slavery is wrong, even if most people are okay with slavery. Genocide is wrong, even if most people are okay with genocide, right? But like homosexual behavior is okay, even if most people think it's wrong, right? So there's specific behaviors, there's things that are independent of the court of public opinion. I think necrophilia is more in line with sexual self-actualization, like homosexuality, where it doesn't matter if 99% of people think it's wrong. Like, really, it's still okay because you haven't proven an individual harm when you have that specific event occur. Okay?
Yes, I have, but I have talked about that harm, right? I literally just laid it out.
The harm that
like explicit.
The harm that you've outlined is like the offense taken by the family. And you could use
not just offense, psychological damage, right? Like
sure.
Not just offense.
In a meaningful, non-based in like illogical reasoning.
Okay. I'll put it in the most like strict terms then, like the incredible psychological damage to the family and the greater society, in the same way that you could have a sufficiently homophobic society in which they would have the exact same reaction.
But
could you not?
But you have.
It's not the exact same reaction.
It's the same, and I don't accept that. And you got to go to the bathroom, so I understand. Like I don't accept that homophobia and necrophilia is the same.
So you're saying there's an additional harm being caused that it seems like Lactoid is sort of ignoring or dismissing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, he's a. I'm not sure of additional. I mean, there is a harm. I'm not sure if there's an additional harm, but there is a harm.
It's just a separate one from the ones that a homophobic person would.
Well, yeah, I guess separate. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean, right? You have
it's a similar illogical harm because
the act of homosexuality will, having consensual homosexual sex is not like a direct harm, despite like what. I mean, his argument is an argument for being against necrophilia. So, like, if he's saying, well, in this reality, you have 99% of people think being gay is bad, and you would cause emotional harm by having, like, maybe your mom find out that you did something gay, but 99% of society hates it, and maybe they outlawed it because they find it so disgusting. And like, if it's the same like kind of comparison, like it's that's the framework in which we decide all things are right and wrong, right? We go through the normative aspects of how we process these things as people. Like if he wants to propose that reality, like, oh my god, guess what? If 99% of the world thought those things, like, yeah, it would be doing harm.
Yeah.
Like that's.
But like what he keeps relating it to is like less than 1% of the population every time, and then trying to say like, what if this fringe minority was the overwhelming majority? That's like saying like, well, what if gravity made everything repel?
There's
like then it wouldn't exist.
Like historically speaking, homosexuality is like actually pretty common in comparison to necrophilia. So like it's a dumb argument.
Yeah. I don't accept that people don't have a valid right to look at their loved ones as still their loved ones and die.
I was gonna ask him when he gets back. I have a question about that. I don't know why he's taking this position. I don't think he has. I don't know why. He doesn't seem like he has to, but he is. Because it seems like these things, like these things don't seem mutually exclusive. Like it feels like you could have both. Now I know we're arguing against, but you could have both. You could have necrosexuals, and you could also have this society where we still cherish our loved ones, and we don't totally reform or change how people feel about those that they've lost or whatever, while still allowing for the self-actualization of necrosexuals.
So before we begin again, hey everyone, if you're enjoying this content and if you're joining on this platform, we can have these conversations, right? Like we could do this in public, and hopefully Twitch moderation doesn't fucking lose their shit on me. If you enjoyed that, then help out this channel. First of all, hit that follow button. You haven't done so yet, right? You've been sitting here, been enjoying this conversation, new to the channel, hit that follow button, make sure notifications are on. So now I'm going live. We do it 7 nights a week. We're here, right? Either here or on YouTube. So hit that follow button. I haven't done so yet. And also support this community. I need your help. Make that happen, right? So if you like me, you'll do this. Then sub to the channel, right? Sub to the channel. It's only $5. $5 to keep these conversations going, right? So that we can have this. We can have more of these tournaments, right? Like the DGG tournament is paid for, but this channel still needs plans to keep on going. So be so kind, help us out. $5. Get our emotes, exclamation emotes in chat for the emotes that you'll get. And
guys,
also,
make sure to support Prime. Like, if you like all the stuff that we do, you got to support the place that lets us do it, right?
Please, thank you.
It's only Prime.
It's only Prime. Yeah, it's only this place that you could have these conversations.
Give your Prime to Prime.
And also, of course, you get ad free viewing, right? So it's a big help to this community. So consider helping the channel. If you got Amazon Prime slash Prime Gaming, then use that here on this channel. Your 1 free sub per month. Use that here on this community to help us out. It goes a long way when you do. So yeah, I really appreciate anyone who can assist us. So thank you, grape jelly. Grape Jelly Gang. Okay, cool. Grape Jelly Gang.
Oh, God, dude.
Thank you for using your Prime Gaming here on this community. It means a lot, helps out a ton. So yeah, if anyone has any Prime Games and you haven't used anywhere else, please do that here. If not, consider subbing to the channel. It's only $5, or resubbing, or gifting bits, or gifting subs. That goes a long way. Support this community so I can keep doing this. I can keep having this platform open for the rest of you. All right. You wanted to ask Lactoid a question?
Yeah. Please support Prime. He brought me in here, and I feel very grateful. So, yeah, Lactoid. So I was just gonna ask, and maybe you heard it. I guess you've got your Corsair Virtuosos or whatever.
Yeah, I broke them, so now they don't charge the best. But
oh, okay. Well, I was just gonna ask. So, kind of the discussion that you and Prime were having. Do you think it's necessary that we reform society to no longer feel similarly like we do about our loved ones who have died? Do you think it's necessary that we reform that feeling, the way we feel about our dead, our loved ones, to have a society where necrosexuals can, self-actualize? Do you think it's a necessary step? Does that question make sense? I can clarify.
No, I get. I don't think it. So my understanding of the conversation so far is that I think that maybe not everybody, but most people, and I think, please correct me if I say anything that you said but I'm not correctly phrasing it, Prime. Not mistaken, Prime. Like, you did say that, like, if somebody puts in their will, like, please, like, I want this to happen to me, you're okay with it then.
I thought that was just Dumpster that said that he agreed with that.
No, I said that as well.
Okay.
But like,
yeah,
I'm talking about. I'm moving this beyond my desires and your desires, right?
Right.
Why society should make this monumental change. Now you keep, and I want to hear back from you. You keep relating this to homosexuality, and like I think I've demonstrated why I don't think these two things are analogous, right? This is what you're hanging your hat on, and that these two things are the same, right? Or slavery, right? I don't think these two things are analogous. So I reject all that, and that's why I'm looking for you a description as to why this separate thing, this unique thing that we haven't done as any societies, as far as I know, right? Why that should be acceptable? Why should we not acceptable? Why should we make the change, right? Like, what value is it to the rest of humanity to be doing this? Where it would be like such a psychological shift, like a social psychological shift to do such a thing. Go ahead.
Right. Well, it's difficult because I'd like to answer Dumpster first, real quick. The reason why I don't think I agree with you, it's not necessary, but I think that we've already moved past the conversation where I think everybody's, maybe except for a few holdouts, are okay with, like, given the most generous circumstances, right? Either the person writes in their will, or the family doesn't really have a big problem with it, or society just doesn't know about it. I don't know. Like, given those circumstances, I think most people in this panel at least, would be okay with it. Okay. So now I think the question is moving past that and addressing maybe some more of the fringe cases about how far do we want to take this and what would actual policy look like? We
So
heard a
you're
lot
saying,
we
you're
heard a
saying,
lot
like, you think some people would agree that, like, while there can be a to B, person to person moral allowance of this, the rest of it would fall into place where it's not morally permissible, right? Like, just because two people can consent to this, then the resounding legal status of it should change.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I think we've already I believe I have satisfactorily established that like in Minecraft there should be at least some necrophilia. Okay, I think if we've already established that.
Are you gonna accept that like the wills matter then? That the wills of the dead do have some form of tangible, or not tangible, but impactful meaning?
Right. So I don't think that, which is why I want to take it further. Right. But that's not this discussion is about necrosexuality, and so all I have to do is simply show that. I mean, I think in order to win the debate, but that that's just my opinion, that everyone's okay with at least a little bit of necrosexuality, right? Like I think people are okay with it as long as I know you're not, but as long as certain externalities are controlled for, right? So as long as the families as long as the family's okay with it, as long as like society doesn't know about it, I like you understand what I'm saying? Like as long as that stuff isn't on the table, or we control for that, we're okay with it. Or if somebody puts it in their own will, some people said they're okay with it, right? So now the question comes, well, how far do we want to take it? I would like to take it further than I think most people in this call would in Minecraft, because again, right? Like
so that's kind of where my question.
When we're talking about real quick, when we're talking about value, right? Like, why would this bring value to people? The question is asked as if I put all.
Why would it bring value to people in a way meaningful to change the entire paradigm of like our society?
Right. But
not just why would it bring value to people, right? We could talk about why it would bring value to like the minutia of people to such an extreme where it still wouldn't matter. But why would it bring value to the point where we should change how we like function?
Right. And so the question I think assumes that I think all what people value is equal, right? That I think, or at least not equal, but all what people value is equal on a person-to-person basis. So, like, I don't even 99% of the population has like deeply values something that I think is wrong. I don't value what they value. Does that make sense? Like, if 99% of people think, homosexuality is wrong, I don't value what they value. If 99% of people think anything is wrong that I don't think is wrong, then I don't value what they value, right? And I want to set up a society that reflects my values, right? And that's my goal, like as a moral agent. And my values here are not too, my values are too, like I said at the beginning, right? Like this idea of individual self-determination, regardless of what the peanut gallery might think.
So it's kind of why I asked, just real quick, just to follow up on the question that I asked. So I asked that question because it sounds like you're advocating for something that is not necessary, but is so burdensome on all of society that nobody would agree we should do it. So why are you advocating for something that seems unnecessary for your end goal of self-actualization for necrosexuals?
Well, because I think there's more self-actualization for necrosexuals if we have a scenario like that, like what I propose.
So you're saying we want to maximally you want them to like be able to maximally self-actualize. They should. Well,
right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So like in the same way that like, we have two laws on the table. One law allows like gay people to give each other hand jobs, and the other bill allows for like full sexual liberation. Like, are they both like increasing self-actualization? Yes. I'm going to be in favor of the second one a lot more than the first one because it advances my goals for society. You're asking me why I want why.
Right.
The question's coming down to like why do I value this for like why do I want society to reflect my values? It seems like very intuitive.
No. I mean, it's not. I understand that you want society to reflect your values, of course. But it sounds like for necrosexuals to self-actualize, we don't need to change how we think about our dead, right? Unless you want to maximally self-actualize them so that we just put our dead bodies out on the street and people can fuck them at will in Minecraft. That would be maximally self-actualizing for them. But we're not going to do that, right? We're gonna do something much less than that, but we'll still allow them to self-actualize, right? Like I don't know. It just seems unnecessary to change everybody's minds about something that that people feel very strongly about. I know that's not like a strong argument, but when you have no reason to change it, why change it, right? It seems to be working pretty well and has benefits.
I'm in favor of incrementalism. I can agree. Incrementalism is fine.
Okay, so you wouldn't. Okay.
Right. On an actual policy perspective, I can agree. Like sometimes you have to like compromise and not take everything you need. What I'm saying, like what I'm trying to imagine, like what kind of society do I think would maximize my principles, would maximize consent, right? Would maximize things that I personally value. And I think a society in which we value people and we don't have this, what I think is a religious holdout, which is valuing decaying matter that happened to once be alive. Again, this is my I don't value them.
It's not religious though.
Atheists also do it.
Yeah, I think it has roots. It has roots in religion.
No,
it doesn't. It has roots in human nature.
Yeah, exactly. If a child who knows nothing about religion, one way or the other, is confronted with their the parents of their the corpse of their dead parent, right? And it's being mutilated, they're going to have an issue with that. They don't immediately see it as a body, right? That's human nature. It has nothing to do with religion. I mean, religion works on top of that, like most things. But like,
we were doing this before we had language.
Yeah.
Well, so Lactoid, there's
we were doing what? We were doing what before language?
Ceremonial burials, respect of the dead.
One of the
considerations of the dead as living beings.
Before
the earlier indicators of society.
It's actually some of the earliest.
Fucking elephants do it.
Society. Like animals do it. It's
I mean,
the inclination of living beings.
I don't want to be pedantic, but like I would disagree with how you're defining language there. But
what do you mean? I'm talking about like, so there is a 60,000-year-old cave in France that they found, full of paintings. Along with paintings, there were also nearby there was a burial site, so there were bodies buried there ceremoniously. Inside of that cave, they were creating things on the walls, but there was no language. There's no indication that they had any forms of communication with each other. They didn't speak words. They didn't share ideals. They didn't formulate concepts of deities, right? Or theisms. So this supersedes pretty much like saying hi.
Okay.
Right?
Do you think it's possible to have a culture that doesn't value dead bodies as persons?
If you have a different species, I mean, because I'm hard pressed to find living organisms that like that with sentience that don't
even if you do, it would still be a fringe
behaviors, right? Like I understand we're peeling off into this realm of like things that we might not really be able to explain, like human nature, but it's on display. It's tangible, right? It's more like physical than not.
So
the argument against.
Okay, so you think there's something natural about human behavior that is opposed, that is in favor of giving this value.
There's something natural about human behavior that associates respect and identities to the dead.
There's something natural about sentient behavior that allows those respects as well.
There's animals that do it too.
Yeah.
They don't bury necessarily their relatives, but they have ceremonies.
Yeah,
they have respectful practices for the dead, and it's usually the animals that we would regard
so like
higher up on the cognitive
you do understand
function.
That
elephants.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but you do understand that like this perspective is a completely distorted worldview, right? Like the thing that you're proposing.
It's fringe for sure.
Fringe is to say the least.
It would be more accurate to say that we should treat the people with necrophilia or necrosexuals in general.
Is antithesis to human nature. Like
Okay.
this
Give them a
fundamental
fleshlight and
belief you're
explain it's the same
proposing.
thing.
So I guess maybe there's just like an era, there's like an aura of like just open question as to whether or not we can have a society in which just culturally we don't value like the dead as much as we value the free actions of the living, right?
Before culture,
I think it's I'm hopeful at least that it's possible that we can develop a culture that does that, because that's how I feel. I also, just because something is, I don't think just because something is like is been the case either just like in terms of the biological drive or been the case in terms of just culture, that necessarily means we have to keep doing it without just reason.
Well, so I think the problem with your argument, though, is that you were willing to concede and not allowing some sexual conduct.
Right. If there can be an independent reason explained, right? So it's right. So, but this is my whole point about homosexuality and contrasting that with pedophilia was that I explained why I think the reason pedophilia is wrong isn't because most people don't like it. That has nothing to do with the fact that it's wrong, right? It's wrong because the negative effects it has on the person who it affects. If we lived in if we lived in Epstein's Island where everybody thinks it's okay, that doesn't change the fact that it's actually wrong. Okay.
Yeah, but what about sex dolls that depict lollies?
Having
no
sex
tangible harm is actually being done to a being, and you're willing to actually regulate against that.
It is, and like having sex with a body that's not capable of reproduction at that point, that's not mature enough for reproduction, is like, it goes against human nature. I mean, like,
wait.
Don't do that. It's gonna fuel him, and then we're gonna have to go through it. He's gonna
and you wonder. No. And you wonder. And you wonder why I keep comparing this to homosexuality. I mean, Jesus, you just made the point.
No. He wants to make that point, and then you wanted to say that, well, you could say that homosexuality is like a biological.
I should have rephrased that.
Contradiction. Then you could go back and see that it's not.
It doesn't matter if it is or it isn't, right? It doesn't matter if homosexual behavior is intrinsically biological or not. That doesn't change the fact whether or not it's right or wrong.
So hold on. You said something. I want to make sure I hit on this, right? You said the reason why pedophilia is wrong is because of the harm it does to the individual. Okay, right? So if we have a child who says, like, having sex with this older individual is not going to cause me any harm at all, right? And somehow we can prove that, then that's okay with you?
No,
or is there a greater harm to society in Minecraft, whatever the fuck? Is that okay with you, or is it simply that, or do we have a greater responsibility for society not to do this?
Yeah, do you think consent should be tailored, or not consent, but like the legality of it, or the societal response should be tailored upon like the individual, or do you think we should have a blanket heuristic for like, this isn't a good thing?
Well, the reason why it's not a good thing is because it has negative effects or a substantial risk of negative effects. And the research seems to show that it has almost universally negative effects.
That's the reason child scientifically or like magically proven to be able to give consent, though.
That's not true. We had a study, and I'd have to find it. But there is a study.
There's no harm being done when it's a doll.
There's a study talking about like interviewing children who we know that they have been sexually assaulted by adults, right? And their feelings about it. And it's not actually quite so universal. This is a very controversial thing to talk about, obviously, but it's actually not so universal. Some of them talk about, hey, this was a good experience for me, right? And I'd have to find it. I'm sorry, I don't have it on me at this moment. But there is one. So like if that's the case, right? So please just grant me that it might not be so universal. This risk, is it okay then?
So I think the risk is universal, but let's play within your hypothetical where a certain sexual act had no risk, like of harm, then it wouldn't be wrong.
No, not that it had none. No, not that it had none. That it can have some. That's a possibility. I'm saying that whether it has none or not, that like as a society that there is a special harm that could be done, and that we need to protect these individuals, right? So like these individuals may or may not have this harm, but as a society we say that you don't get to consent to this, no matter what, whether yeah.
Well, because children can't consent, right? And so the idea is
because we say so. Because we just say so, though.
Well, I mean, I would argue that it like has to do with brain development and certain types of ability to make judgments and decisions. I think that the reason why it's wrong is because that risk exists, and the risk is high enough. There's enough of a substantial risk of harm that we're not comfortable allowing children who have undeveloped brains, who don't have the judgment to accept those risks, to make those decisions. Like that's why it's wrong, not because society just believes that it's wrong. It's wrong because of those reasons.
Okay, so then you automatically don't care about the to those same children, right? That same child who you'd have protected from that child predator, right? That same child that you protected from them, you would say that the psychological harm that you're going to experience with your dead mother being violated, right? That doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't value third-party like psychological harms nearly as almost at all.
I guess you've said that. Yes, sure.
Yeah.
But okay, I guess you still. I guess my problem is that we still haven't proven the base point, and other people might have a different. Yeah, you go.
Lactoid. If you don't value third parties, psychological harm, then why would you value the psychological harm coming to this person who wants to have sex with a dead body, and the state just steps in and takes them away?
Because it's not a third party anymore. You're having like a direct state intervention and invasion upon a specific individual. You're having like an effect. And in fact, hold on. When I say effect, I'm talking specifically about that. A direct invasion upon somebody's person in the same way if the state was to say 2 gay people can't have sex.
Yeah. Well, so question. This is all based on the valued harm that's being done, right?
No, I don't think it is. Well,
is it based on harm being done?
Well, I guess ultimately when I say that like I value people being able to make personal like sexual decisions, like that's a value that I have. So I am ranking that value above like the harm that I don't really value that much. Yeah.
You are willing to concede not allowing some sexual conduct.
Yeah, obviously. So
that kind of impedes on your moral values in all sexual liberalization.
It doesn't, because not all sex is the same. Like you can make specific, you can bring specific distinguishing factors. But what my whole argument is that like this distinguishing factor that society has a big problem with it, I don't think that's a good distinguishing factor, because that was the basis for a whole bunch of discrimination that proved to be stupid, right? It proved to be discrimination that this panel does not agree with.
Yeah, but your basis is on sexual liberalization should be allowed and promoted and pushed forward, and no governing entity should impede on any of that. But you're willing to concede on not even allowing them to have sex with a doll depicted as a lolly.
Yeah, so like I should be allowed to like have weed in my apartment, which I don't have, by the way, in case the police are watching. I honestly don't. But I should be allowed to have weed in my apartment.
I should be allowed to have police in my apartment.
I should be allowed to have weed in my apartment. And even if the idea of weed being in my apartment bothers like 99% of people, I should be allowed to have gay sex in my apartment, even if that idea bothers 99% of people. Okay, that doesn't mean that I can like wrap up weed and like throw it at my neighbor's house, or like I don't fucking know, like waft all the fucking vapors over so that he gets a contact high, right? We can make just because specific behaviors are not okay, that doesn't undermine the exact principle that I'm trying to uphold here, which is that people.
But you're not willing to give up the fact that you've already conceded on all sexual liberalization isn't okay.
Right, when it comes into contact with other principles that I also firmly believe. I have a firm principle that children should not be hurt. I also have a firm principle in people should engage in sexual self-actualization. Now we have a conflict here when it comes to pedophilia, and I think I personally value the principle of children not getting directly hurt more than I value the pedophiles.
Yeah, but they won't be directly hurt with these childlike or lolly-like sex dolls.
So, like, I think this kind of goes what we talked about at the very beginning of this debate. So I'll just defer to my answer then. It's the same answer that I gave at the beginning of the debate for that question.
So this may have been answered, but and Prime kept trying to hammer this question in. I don't think any of us have been satisfied by your response.
Obviously not.
But it's the idea of the child, and you just said, like, we don't like pedophilia, or it's illegal because of the harm it does. But like your proposal does create like a very realistic scenario where it does harm to children, like psychological harm.
I don't know how many ways I can answer that specific question. Like I said, it's a third-party harm that I don't value.
So,
in the same way, in the same way, I wouldn't value it if like the kids of a dad.
Is it a third party because the initial act isn't like associated with those people? So
yeah,
it's like
it's not
tertiary reactions.
Yeah, it's not violating them in the same way that like let's say like a dad like divorced his wife and like started like because he was gay and he started having a bunch of gay sex. Like even if the children were really fucking upset about that, like because maybe they were homophobic, maybe they didn't like the idea of their dad like getting divorced, like all those combined, even if the kids were hurt by that, again, like that's not important to whether or not this person can like.
But their dad has agency, and so does the other person have agency.
Right? It's not like their mom's like gone. It's not like this breakup of the marriage. It's of course a shock to the children, but it's not like they lose access to their parents all of a sudden.
What I mean by agency there is, I think in a necrophilia relationship, there is also it's still 100% agency, right? In the same way that if I have, which I don't, if I have weed in my apartment and I'm smoking that, I am using a non-animated, non-living substance for my own pleasure. If I have a fleshlight and I use it on myself, even if it bothers 99% of people, let's say we live in a very religious society where they think like pornography is evil and they think fleshlights are evil, right? If I used it, even though they might deeply piss off a whole bunch of people, I don't think that's like grounds to legalize it.
I don't think any amount of like normalcy that you would like hope to introduce would somehow overwrite like their initial impulsive response. Like how would you train generations to ever allow like something like how would you ever train like so children don't get upset when they find out what happened to their mother, right? Like it's demoralization. It's not going to happen.
I mean, I think that my advocacy here is that we should try. Like we should, kind of using the same model. We should use the same. We should to normalize it. We should using the same framework.
Model.
Use the same.
We should normalize the idea of children getting used to the possibility and the eventual impact of their corpse of their mother being used for like sexual.
Using the framework of prior past oppressed sexual minorities, I would like to see this push in the future. I cannot. Will I be successful? I don't know.
Why do you keep talking about gay people, dude?
Dude, like you're just gonna end up making like a NAMBLA argument or like something real dangerous there that like it's not gonna tie into. It's non-analogous. It's a false equivocation. It's a false equivocation.
I think I guess I will. Most people will not be on my side on this. I understand. It's too intrinsically like most people's cultural upbringing, I would argue, is such that they are heavily opposed to this. I recognize I'm not going to convince most people. I think it is analogous. Obviously, this is a disagreement. I think it is analogous to other forms of oppressed sexual minorities, and I hope to at least convince a couple people. Maybe there's some people here who initially thought, yeah, that's disgusting, but now that they hear this, and maybe in their mind they see the parallels here. Maybe they think, yeah, actually, you know what? For the exact same principles in which I'm okay with like homosexual behavior, I have to accept I'm okay with this too. And I hope that those people
find a guy to fuck.
Yeah, well, no, we can form a political union and we can overthrow the leftists once and for all.
Deep state that's stopping us from our corpse enjoyment.
Yeah.
In Minecraft.
That deep state 99.999999999% of people.
The genetic like behavior, the inherent behaviors of like sentient.
You have the majority.
Yeah. So like
the degenerate masses.
I think so. Sorry, you go first, J Boss.
Go ahead, Prime. I'm
sure. No problem. So I think it's. So as far as I know, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but you all seem to be cis straight males. Am I incorrect there?
How dare you?
Okay, so I'm just gonna. All right, so yes, you're all cis straight males.
I am not a straight male.
Oh, are you homosexual or bisexual? Sorry.
Erasure.
Okay, then
erasure, dude.
That's the case. Then fair enough.
I'm bi.
Okay, fair enough. It seems like a lot of people within the LGBT community would not like their like you. So at the very beginning, Lactoid, you talked about like, oh, you're making a argument made by homosexual bigots, right, in the past, right? But the biggest argument made by homosexual bigots is that allowing homosexuals to do what they want, right, would lead to a slippery slope, right, down to this, like down to like one of the ultimate taboos, having sex with a dead body, right? If you had gone back, if we filmed this and gave it to us, someone 30 years in the past, like, well, look, this is what I told you, right? Look at them. We've allowed sexual degeneracy, and so it's led us to this point, right? And I think a lot of people in the LGBT community would honestly hate the fact that you're using this, right? That doesn't mean your argument is incorrect. I'll say that. It doesn't mean your argument is incorrect. But like they would just honestly despise that, and that relating these two movements, just like they despise it when those arguments are used for to try to justify child sex, right?
It's weak ground to stand on, in my opinion, too. I think it's like there's, and we can argue like historical precedents and like human inclination. But like I just don't think it's a convincing argument. Like because this is the shock of Lactoid's perspective that usually like riles up like other VCs where this discussion occurs and everything just degrades into madness, right? But like I don't want to like attack him on that too heavily. But it's still a weak argument. Like it just feels so weak, right? It's not convincing at all.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Sorry, I was just saying, no, we'll go to you next. I'm not going to attack you. Like, this is why I'm glad that we actually kept this quite civil. So, shout out to all you guys. But I have no reason to attack you. And again, as I said at the start, I'm actually closer to you on this issue. I just don't feel that you've proved, at least when it comes to, like, morally speaking, right? But as a move that society ought to take, I don't think you've met that burden. I just don't see it yet. But you were going to say something, Dempster?
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you, Prime. Kind of.
Oh.
Just press the spacebar. Sorry. I'm in the same boat. Had something for Lactoid.
Take your time. About sexual deviancy.
So here's the thing. This is the thing that I think is unsatisfying when people engage with somebody like Lactoid. I know, and you're gonna think I'm gonna say something bad, but I'm gonna say something good. I think you're pretty good at explaining your thoughts. Maybe because you're a lawyer or whatever. You're clear. You've definitely thought about this, and I think the unsatisfying aspect to this is that it's hard to logic your way into him being wrong. Now he'll use LGBT challenges or arguments that might seem unsatisfying to use, but if the logic holds, the logic holds. Like that's just and I think that's unsatisfying. But the problem is that there's got to be some other way. If this is wrong, there's got to be some other way around, right? We couldn't find anti-gay people couldn't find it back then, and if there is one now for necrophilia, we need to be able to find it. And in my opinion, we're not finding it. But except this, there's a total discussion to be had around the impacts this has on society, of course. So morally and legally, I'm basically at the point that if you regulated it heavily and somebody consented to it on their will, then whatever. Beyond that, I think there's a lot of questions as to whether there's any social or societal benefit to going further once you've self-actualized these people. But that's kind of where I stand. And that's why I think that, I don't know, hopefully that made some sense.
If you write down consent and then, you change your mind before you die, are you just like fucked, or?
I mean, that's change your mind and then you don't have time to get to like a legal person to
right, yeah, you just fucked.
Yeah, I mean,
literally fucked. Yeah.
That would be a
like
problem.
If you were in like a non-right state of mind and people didn't realize that like telling people, hey, fuck my dead body when I die is a non-right state of mind, then like what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Plus, like, also, why are we assuming that wanting to fuck dead bodies
listen,
is the correct state of
you
mind
could
just 'cause
you could
Lactoid
push
says
me.
It's like being
I
gay?
refuse the will thing. That just doesn't work.
Well, you could push me to the point where maybe I would only say that societally I would accept it, at least right now, until I think about it further. Like when somebody's got a gun pointed to their head, or the injection's just about to go in, or the cord's just about to be pulled, and they say yes, please, and then they're dead. Maybe you could push me back that far, but I don't think. I think that circumstances can exist where it seems like I struggle to see the harm.
So do you think that people should just be like all required to decide like fuckable, yes, no, like when they get a driver's
On a
license,
driver's
and it's
license.
like organ donor.
No, probably
Like,
no.
if found, please give my eyes to John Hopkins, my liver to John Hopkins,
And
and
my
my
butt
asshole
to-
to
and
my
Lactoid.
penis
butthole
to
to
John
Lactoid.
Smith down the street.
my butthole to Lactoid. All right.
Yeah, right. Like, no, like you're
I know,
saying like at
I-
most,
yeah.
and I think at agree, and this may be a stretch for some people. I don't want to, but I think that if we had to, we can concede that between you and I, there can be some form of morality in the transition of this consent.
Yeah.
But at large, like we should work to prevent this behavior from being the norm, right? Especially like if it's super what's the right word? Like pertaining to this
Sus.
specific condition being met, right? Yeah, super sus. Like you're gonna have all these people then thinking like, oh, they told me it's okay, or like trying to enact this for themselves outside of like these confines that we set by like you and I specifically agreeing to this doesn't mean that like every person specifically, unless you do like a driver's license thing or some stupid way to opt into it like officially. But like there's no way to meaningfully say that everybody can do this unless you're going to say like commoditize bodies for everything, which I think is wrong.
So it should be like an
Like
elite
medical
thing, right?
practice,
Like when
yeah,
people-
sure, but I don't think that for sexual practices, especially for like just like roundabout to way to say it is like I think that commodification of this should be bad for
So-
all non-medical practices.
So what about this? Like if we have a scenario where like a necrosexual dies and they put on their will they want to allow some other necrosexual to be able to have sex with their body. Somebody who's like, I know what this experience is like. I know what it feels like to not be able to, you know, self-actualize.
Yeah,
and
I think
wanna
we can
give
say
to
that might
somebody.
be moral,
Yeah.
but we can still say that it should be like illegal if we wanted to press it on that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you're saying, I agree with. Like, if it goes further and it results in like people like going outside and trying to like scrounge up a body and like have sex with it, I think that's wrong, right? It's not theirs. They don't have the, it's not their property. It's not somebody they cherished or were responsible for or are responsible for. So I don't think they.
Yeah, it
should be
only
allowed, right?
works on this edge case, right? Like if we're talking
Yeah.
about like in a vacuum where only our two assholes exist, like yeah, maybe we can give that consent, right? But
Right,
like
and I would hope that never mind.
there's many people in this situation that like aren't gonna give this, so we shouldn't just blanket this, right?
I agree completely. We shouldn't blanket it. Absolutely.
A little and ask you something, Dumpster. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So how would you approach that harm? And it's the one we keep using, which is like the psychological trauma children have to suffer through to comprehend what's happening to their mother.
Yeah. That's a tough one. I was hoping not to have to
Like
answer it.
like
Look, if he wants to be gay in the confines of his own apartment, he should be allowed to have police in his apartment.
as opposed to
Right.
hold on. So as opposed to
Yeah.
the 99% of the world being homosexual and somebody getting upset, that's a social imposition, right? This is not exactly a social imposition. This is somebody being like shocked and disgusted and horrified over what is happening to their mother, whom they care about and still likely see as their mother. So like that's kind of the difference in my head. It's like that's why the LGBT argument is so weak. Is like, well, you're saying that like grandma's upset because she thinks her son's going to hell, right? That's
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
fear imposed upon her by like that's true. Like if you did this and you had like a sample of humanity who had evolved in a state that they were never bothered with, that they were like completely separated from the world, from the imposition of like ideals or whatever, I'm sure that this effect would occur. Like nobody could really say like it wouldn't, right?
I think there's a possibility that that's true. I think that there's a possibility. I don't have any research to suggest this, but I think there's a possibility that like naturally humans want to take care of one another and cherish somebody after they're gone by burying them or having a ceremony or something. It wouldn't surprise me if there was some innate characteristic of humans that led to that. And, you know, animals somehow express similar things. But with the question with the you know, like 99% of people are gay, and you know somebody acts in a certain way, and those people get offended, blah 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 blah. What we were discussing earlier, it's hard for me to come up with like an actual answer because there's like in my head there's a couple steps that would need to be crossed to get to the point where somebody's having sex with somebody's mother. And those steps, I think, would, at least in the society that I'm sort of imagining, which I think differs quite a bit from lactoids, there's a lot of safeguards in place for that not to happen, right? If a family doesn't want their mother to be sexed up, then they, that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't like happen against their will, right? But
it's just a matter of harm, right?
yeah, but I do agree with Lactoid here a little bit when it comes to like, what makes an act wrong is the harm that's caused to a person, because a third party can be both feel harmed for a right and wrong reason. They might hate gay people, they might like gay people. They might have wanted their mom to get punched in the face and she didn't, and now they're mad, or they might have wanted her to not get punched in the face and she did, and now they're mad. So like you could want something good, you could want something bad, and feel.
I just feel like that rationale is a slippery slope. So an example would be like, I mean, assuming if, like, say you kill somebody, right? And since we don't care about the harm it causes to others, the person concerned is dead, so it doesn't matter. And now under Lactoid's logic, they're irrelevant. They're not a person.
Well, so in that case, I would say that person who's dead was harmed. So, but like, if you were to say like somebody wants to be punched in the face, they understand everything about being punched in the face, and they get punched in the face. My girlfriend would probably be upset if I did that. Somebody hit me in the face as hard as they could, and I knew everything that could happen. I was fully informed about it, and I still said, "Yep." My girlfriend would feel my girlfriend would feel bad about it. But does that mean the person who punched me in the face is wrong for having done so? I mean, I wanted them to do it. I asked for it. I consented to it fully. So that's the thing that's tripping me up with the Lactoid thing, is like when you flip it, it feels wrong, but when you flip it back, it feels right. And it's like I agree that it feels weird, but it's hard to think through. It's hard to like get to the other side and say like I don't know. That's kind of where my head's at the moment.
So for me, sorry, go ahead, please.
Well, I was gonna say from arguing from harm, it's never really a good thing, because then you're gonna just have to revert back to utilitarianism. What exactly measures that harm? What if there's some, hypothetical strange Yahweh God monster who would feel more harm from you committing a certain act, extremely more harm, more than every other life in the world, rather than to not destroy the world? Then the harm that it would cause to all the people emotionally and physically who wouldn't want the world destroyed. Arguing from harm is never really something that you can measure. You can measure physical harm maybe, but that's on a...
I mean, we could say something like infringing autonomy or something. I'm sort of just like hand waving when I say it a little bit, not to dive too deep into like philosophy, but I don't know. Might be an unsatisfying answer, but I think that's where I stand at the moment.
So I guess for me, like, we give meaning to, and because I've been drowning myself in prison-related research for the past week, we give meaning. I'm going to spoil something, but we give meaning to the idea of justice, and there is generally our perspective is justice, is it serving us, or is it serving like the integrity of society? So like when it comes to harm and it comes to the reasons and motivations behind enacting justice, right? One thing is for societal stability, but there's also like the idea of this is our prime motivation was likely due to our external, even though we're not the victim, it's our external like desire for retribution. One of the founding principles of our justice system was retribution. And like this, what with this proposal, it is just it's begging for retribution, even though like I guess for some reason we suddenly don't think it matters. But it like, don't you there's no reality where I think like people, I mean, you would have people like trying to burn down these people's houses, like frankly, like if we're no holds bar, like we are going to at our core like reject this as a society, right? Like if we don't have the institution of like, if we don't have society there to keep us from devolving into this, and where this is starting to become normalized. Like our natural reaction will likely to be to violently reject. That's just what I think.
Are we gonna do closing statements for this
Yeah,
one?
I was just about to do that. All right, thanks all for this. If you want to close out now, that's fine, and yeah, we'll move on from there. So guys, if you've been enjoying this content, hit that follow button right now, in case you haven't done so yet. Make sure notifications are on, saying I'm going live into 7 nights a week. Okay, hit us up, and especially on our social media, !social and chat. I didn't push that before, but you know, we got Twitter, we got Discord, where we do everything, including this conversation, and YouTube. So check out our YouTube, and sometimes we game there on YouTube. So check it out, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Okay, yeah. Well, do the other members other than Lactoid, do you guys want a final statement on this or not? If not, then I'll just give Lactoid one. I'm asking.
And I told Lactoid this, and this his whole framework and argument only works on left-leaning people and homosexuals. Guaranteed. If you pull this in a conservative room, and they're religious or they are against, you know, other things, this argument would never work.
Okay. Is that your final statement?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm just saying. I think it's just, like, funny because I want to actually see what he does on a conservative panel after this now, because now he's going to develop a whole argument against the panel of people like that. So.
I think
you take this to a Pornhub stream.
Yeah, this is a bit of an assumption. I feel like I align politically, like, kind of with Prime in a lot of value freedom a lot, and I still think.
Well, okay, I'm talking about the logistics of this whole thing. So the logistics of this whole thing is that we allow certain forms of sexual promiscuity, and it's because we want to do it in the name of sexual liberalization, consent, and all this kind of stuff. But in a conservative platform or a religious platform, it wouldn't work because there's certain barriers where there's lines that you're just not allowed to cross. And, I mean, you'll see actively now, I mean, conservatives will say that they would legislate against homosexuals, or if they, you know, had the opportunity to, or religious people would say the same exact thing. Some people would argue otherwise. I think this would be a much interesting panel if he was put up against people who were willing to regulate against those certain kinds of things, because I think it would add a little bit more nuance to how he has to exactly argue the morality of it all.
Fair enough. Okay. Anyone else?
I thought it was a really interesting conversation, personally. Despite, like, if we didn't seek a solid resolution, I thought it was really interesting idea to push into in a place where people aren't yelling and falling apart because Lactoid said something about gay people. And use it as an example.
I respect him greatly for being able to 1v5 this for 3 hours.
No,
I think Lactoid did awesome.
Yeah, shout out to you,
here
Lactoid.
for 3 hours.
It's too bad he lost, but
too bad he lost.
It was a valiant effort.
Lactoid.
Sorry, Lactoid. Maybe next time. Maybe next
Hitler.
I'll give you final word.
Great. So I want to talk a little bit. Fipto, what you just said I think is interesting, because I have this conversation a lot, and I have this conversation in a lot of servers, and I'm not just part of lefty servers. I'm part of a lot of conservative servers. And you're right in that the reaction is way more vitriolic from conservatives and tankies, right? I got banned from Infrared server within 30 minutes of joining because I was asked whether or not I support this position, and I said yes. I was immediately banned. They won't even address the conversation. When you go into the political or politics, Doobie server, or if you go into conservative Discord server, the reaction is incredibly vitriolic, and the words are very the language they use is, this is degenerate, right? What you're proposing is unnatural. What you're proposing will lead to the degeneration of society, and you are wrong. I think that and I disagree with them, a lot of non-libertarian conservatives hold that principle very deeply. This concern against the degeneration of society and against the established norm. That's where conservative comes from, right? Conserving the cultural values. I think that a lot of lefties, although they are more progressive and in terms of changing specific social norms, obviously this is a subject in which they are still conservative. I think at least most are, right? Most lefties are still going to be conservative about this. Because this is a level in their mind, a level of degeneracy, which goes too far. And it's too wrong. I guess maybe I'm just a little bit wonky. I don't actually have that kind of mental thing, right? When I analyze the situation, I don't care for this idea of degeneration of a society. I think that degeneration of a society is a circular argument foundationally, right? You're saying that, something is culturally rejected, therefore it causes outrage, and that therefore it's wrong. And then that wrong is used as a basis to culturally reject it. And then the cultural rejection causes outrage, which causes wrong, which is a reason to culturally reject it. It's a circular argument entirely. I think at this point, at this stage, I've made all the points I can. I really want to give a massive thanks to Prime for allowing me to express myself and allowing me to express his opinion. Seriously, massive kudos to you. I think you're a smart guy. I really appreciate that. Obviously, we have a lot of political disagreements, not just on this, but I'm sure on a lot of things. But I have a great deal of respect for you. And as it comes to this discussion on necrosexuality, I guess I'll just have to leave it up to the judgment of the court of public opinion to decide it for themselves. And thank you all.
Shout out to you again. I just wanted to say though, I did definitely agree with you on this social degeneracy thing. Like that's a terrible argument. And people rely on that. Well, like society, as it stands, will be different, and I don't like that. What? So who gives a shit? So I think that's true. And beyond that, I just thought you did like an excellent job of arguing your point, which is a difficult point to make, right? Like it's not an easy one, but you didn't shy away from it, and respect back. Okay. So to my audience, we will continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have the Reverie Roundtable. So come back for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have people here. We're going to argue about stuff. We're going to yell. It's going to be great.